WFPRLP, Franklin on 102.9 FM.
Time being 7:03, I'm going to call to order the Franklin School Committee meeting. Quick meetings are recorded by Franklin TV and shown on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 29, as well as recorded by Franklin Matters. And at the conclusion of our meeting, we'll be adjourning to executive session and will not be returning to open meeting. All right, so we're going to begin with our pledge students today.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Evan Chelman, the principal at Parmenter Elementary School. And we were asked to invite one student, but we invited 12 and 7 came. That's how special this council is. So I'm just going to introduce, and then I'll let Chairperson Callahan move forward with a description of why they're here. So we have with us Clara Beauchesne, Yao Bwachke, Maya Coburn, Ava McAlpine, Christian Beksha, Bobby Antico, and Gracelyn Cater. If you could come on up and stand around the mic.
All of these students are part of the Charter Education Council. It's a special student leadership group that plays a vital role in our school community. It provides a platform for our young leaders to voice their ideas, advocate for positive change, and contribute to the betterment of our school and community. Facilitated by our school adjustment counselors, Jessica Morigolan and Adria Lazur, the Character Education Council meets regularly throughout the school year to plan opportunities that connect our core values with meaningful learning experiences and community service projects. This year, 12 council members, 6 fifth graders, and 6 fourth graders were selected from 64 candidates who applied and interviewed for a position. These dedicated students embody the spirit of leadership and service. Among the efforts this year, the council has played a major role in organizing, promoting, and participating in the following school-wide events. Unity Day, a day during which all of Parmenter came together to celebrate kindness, acceptance, and inclusion. Treats for Troops, a post-Halloween candy drive in collaboration with the local chapter of the Franklin Lions Club to send special treats to members of the military serving overseas. We have Cards for Veterans, a card collection event to distribute notes of appreciation to veterans through the Franklin Lions Club. Winter Gear Drive, a children's winter clothing collection to donate to local children and families in need through a partnership with Cradles to Crayons. World Cancer Day, a Hats On fundraising day for the Jimmy Fund to honor people who are fighting or have fought cancer. Kindness Week, a week devoted to spreading kindness through the school community and even the town by organizing Parmenter's contribution to Hearts on the Common. And the Spring Food Drive, a week-long food collection in collaboration with the PCC to support local families in need through the Franklin Food Pantry. In addition to prepping, planning, and promoting all these events, the Character Education Council regularly presents during the whole school meetings and contributes valuable ideas about how to strengthen our school community. I want to welcome you all very much. Some amazing work you've all done. If we could all please rise. You can lead us off in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much. Bless you. And now, as is customary, we'll pause for a moment of silence. Thank you. You guys want to get out of here? You're welcome to.
Hello.
All right, review of agenda. Does the agenda look okay to everybody? All right, payment of bills, taken care of, payroll, Vice Chair.
Payroll's in order.
All right, student reps.
Hi, so to start off with some whole school news, all class officers and representatives will present election speeches next Friday in an extended advisory, and then voting for next year's officers will be after that, and then voting for next year's reps will be on June 10th. The theater's next show, Peter and the Starcatcher, will be in the FHS courtyard on June 7th and 8th at 7:30 p.m. 9th grade has Science and Tech MCAS on June 4th and 5th. 40% Club will be collecting food for the Franklin Food Pantry for May. There's collection boxes in the lobby in the main entrance. Early FHS summer strength conditioning program registration ends May 31st. Scope Club is hosting a buoy ball tournament on June 6th at 2:30, and all teams must be signed up by June 1st. And then for any incoming freshmen, you can still sign up for High School Experience, which is a 2-day program from August 6th and August 7th, where freshmen can meet each other, learn about the school, meet some upperclassmen and faculty, and you can sign up through FHS Lifelong Learning Institute or the FHS website. For some news about sports, cheerleading tryouts will be held on June 4th and 5th from 5:30 to 7:30 in the FHS gym. Regular season is coming to a close with many teams, and a lot of teams are still waiting to see who they're going to play in the first round and when that will take place. Boys lacrosse is currently ranked 9th, girls lacrosse and baseball are both ranked 17th. And then huge congrats to the girls track team who won the MIA Division I championship. Today, Unified Track had a really successful states meet, and lastly, congratulations to the girls tennis team who beat Durfee today in the preliminary round of playoffs. For some news on the class of 2024, graduation is May 31st, and that will be live streamed on Franklin TV, and that's starting at 6:30. Senior Week activities started today, and they'll continue for the rest of the week with super fun activities like Kimball Farms, Senior Cruise, and other things. And then congratulations to the valedictorian, Anna David, and the salutatorian, Jen Soho. And then some news about the class of 2025. Juniors had a really successful prom on May 3rd, and we're really looking forward to a super fun senior year. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Start down this way.
Yeah, thank you for the report and congratulations to your team and especially congratulations to valedictorian and Sam.
Yeah.
Thanks once again.
Yeah, thanks. Good to hear. I was thinking about those ability tryouts. I bet that's a hard team to make.
Yeah. Super good, always winning states.
Yeah, right. Congrats to all the athletes. You're almost at the end of the year, and the teachers.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Enjoy the summer.
You too.
Okay. Good evening, everyone in the chambers online, and good evening, school committee. Before we get to our retiree recognitions, I wanted to just provide two updates. We were fortunate to have the parliamentary character ed group here. The next group is from the high school that I want to recognize, and then obviously we'll move into the retiree recognition segment of the evening. So we are excited to announce that the Franklin Public Schools continues to participate in the Massachusetts Seal of Biliteracy program for the 23-24 school year. This program is designed to recognize students who are proficient in English and any other language, regardless of whether they learned it at school, in the community, or at home. Our participation in the Seal of Biliteracy program reflects our commitment to encouraging language learning, certifying biliteracy skills, and recognizing the value of language diversity. To earn the Seal of Biliteracy, the students' names that I will share with you who are here tonight to be recognized must have demonstrated a high level of proficiency in English on the ELA MCAS, as well as on the World Language State Approved Assessment for the language in which they have learned. The following students have earned the Seal of Biliteracy in respective languages. So I'll read the names. What I'd like you to do, can you please come up, Miss Evans, just to stand over by the microphone, and can we have the students just start to come up, and I will say your name and the language, and if you could make your way up so that people know who you are, and then we'll give you some recognition. Let's start with Emma Ferreira for French. You can stand right up there. Yep. Zoe Santos, French. Hannah Hamoy, Portuguese. Victoria Oliveira, Portuguese. Katrina Calitri, Spanish. Abigail Drake, Spanish. Mariana Fernandez Martin, Spanish with distinction, which means that Mariana scored advanced on her English and her Spanish assessment. Michael Fernandez Martin, who is Spanish, and Ryan Palekia, Spanish. And it's also worth noting and sharing that Hannah Hamoy and Victoria Oliveira will be attending UMass Amherst and will be awarded 12 credits in each for earning the Seal of Biliteracy. Michael, isn't that amazing?
Yeah, we have two more. We have Michael.
Oh, please. Oh, and Michael Fernandez Martin will be attending Bentley University. And it's because I jumped in and answering. Yeah. Will be awarded 6 credits for earning the seal, and Abigail Drake will be attending Stonehill College, where she'll be awarded 3 credits for earning the seal. This is exciting for our students and our district's long-term goal, which is to create postgraduate credentialing opportunities. So, anything to add, Ms. Evans, at this point? Put you on the spot.
I apologize for stepping on you.
It's a team effort.
Just that we're so proud of these learners. These are multilingual scholars here, and we hope to continue all of this in the future, strengthening our program and also honoring the languages that our students speak at home as well, not just learn in school. So congratulations. I'm so proud of you guys. They say it all the time, but publicly.
Do you want to get a photo of them? And then while
Yes.
we're doing that, we can all just, let's give them a round of applause.
Hold on, let me just get one more. You know how it is.
Laura, you use your phone.
One more.
Do you want to cut them loose, or do you want me to keep them?
Oh, yeah, no, they can, can take off. You're like, congratulations, fantastic.
Just while they're transitioning, my final announcement was already mentioned, but FHS graduation for the class of 2024 will take place on Friday, May 31st at 6:30 at FHS. If you'd like more information, you can go to the Franklin High website, and all of the information about graduation is housed there as well. Okay. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
No?
Yeah, it's a great thing, you know, what they achieved. It's a great thing, and the stronger our school committees and as well as our entire school districts. It's a great thing.
It is. No, I absolutely agree, and it's something too that it's, not to, obviously that's years and years of hard work that all these students have put in, and the teachers as well. And just shows the importance of the world languages and all the programs throughout the entire, really K-12 experience that we have, that it's not something that just kind of starts senior year to kind of pick that up. I'm sure that every single one of those students have been in the classroom with an amazing teacher and so much support at home as well for years and years and years to come, not just at the high school level. So it's wonderful to see the culmination in that.
Okay, for the next segment, we will now honor our retirees. And just quickly, before we begin, I just wanted to take a moment to just say how appreciative we are to everyone collectively for choosing to work in Franklin. You could have worked many places, and you've had opportunities along the way to move, to go to other districts, and you chose to stay here and work here and dedicate your vocation, your career, to educating the students of Franklin. And for that, on behalf of the community and every child that you had the opportunity to educate, we just thank you all for your work and for everything you've done for Franklin Public Schools over that time. And without further ado, I will kick it to Dr. Rogers and Mrs. Morano, who will read some personalized comments from folks who have worked with our retirees who are in the audience today.
And then we'll invite you up here as well to embarrass you a little. All right, so we'll start with Mrs. Beth Ackley. So Beth Ackley has served as a middle school math teacher in the Franklin Public Schools for the past 25 years. She'd worked with many students and colleagues over these years and has taken an active part in the professional work of the middle school math department. This includes working several summers to develop an authentic and engaging summer school experience for students who needed that additional support. We thank Mrs. Ackley for all her contributions to the Horace Mann community and to the Franklin Public Schools community.
Come on up, Mrs. Stay standing and just kind of join over here and we'll have everyone up for the photo. Front of the class, right? Hey. Yeah.
Oh,
Just
sorry.
stay right here
I'm
and
reading.
we'll have people follow.
Want me to keep going?
Yes.
Ellen Sabinoff. Ellen Sabinosh is a dedicated teacher at the Parmenter School for 33 years and has left an indelible mark on the school community through her unwavering commitment to her students and colleagues. She taught first and second grade with passion and empathy, going above and beyond to connect with each student. Whether through lunch bunches, walks home, or one-on-one conversations, she makes every student feel valued and supported. Ellen embodies the qualities of an exceptional elementary teacher: compassionate, engagement, and dedication. Her infectious wit, humor, and love for her job have fostered wonderful relationships with students and staff alike. Ellen mentored numerous teachers and student teachers, sharing her wealth of knowledge and passion for teaching. She was also a staple at school functions, fundraisers, and her students' extracurricular activities, demonstrating her unwavering support and dedication. Ellen's retirement marks the end of an era, but her impact will be felt for years to come. Miriam Connolly.
Just come up, maybe stand right here so you're in the...
That way I can read to you. I feel like my back is to you. Miriam began in Franklin in 1996 at the Horace Mann Middle School, teaching life skills classes in cooking and sewing. 5 years later, she went to teach at the high school. She taught so many different classes at the high school, including child development, nutrition, independent living, and 9th and 10th grade health. She has been fortunate to work in a wonderful collaborative department. Miriam was the assistant director for high school experience for several years and is currently the SAD advisor. The proudest accomplishment of her career was developing and being the advisor for the Best Buddies Club. They began with a handful of students and colleagues who believed every student should have friends and be a valued member of the community. They grew in size to around 100 members and had many adventures, including an annual Best Buddies prom and going to the Red Sox and the Paw Sox games. One of her favorite Best Buddy moments was the annual Special Olympics, when our athletes returned to the student body lined up outside to greet them. She was so lucky to interact with so many kind and dedicated students and colleagues through Best Buddies. When she began at Franklin, her children were 3, 4, 6, and 8. Now, 28 years later, they are all grown and have families of their own. She will always be thankful to have had an opportunity to work with so many wonderful and dedicated people.
Yes, she is. Come on up, Laura.
Behind the
I
wall.
can't see, she's behind the pole. Laura Welshoff was hired in 1999 and has worked for 25 years in the Franklin Public Schools. She is a dedicated 6th grade social studies teacher at Annie Sullivan Middle School. She has engaged so many students throughout her years and collaborated with many colleagues who will greatly miss her contributions to the school community. Laura recently had her first grandchild and is looking forward to spending time with her family and friends in retirement. Congratulations.
Bob Miller. Bob Miller worked with Franklin Public Schools for a little over 4 years as a van monitor. Bob was a dedicated employee and loved being with the students on the van. He worked with a few students in his years with Franklin. He was always willing to go above and beyond when needed. Bob was great not only with the students he was a monitor for, but all the students that were in the van with him. He loved engaging with the students about the things that they were interested in. Thank you for your time in Franklin, and we hope you enjoy your retirement, Bob. Christine Carter. After an impressive 32 years of dedicated service at Jefferson School, Chris Carter is retiring, leaving behind a legacy that will be remembered for generations. Known for her unwavering commitment to students' health and well-being and her passion for teaching, Chris has profoundly impacted the school culture with her infectious sense of humor and her knack for organizing memorable social events for staff. Her exceptional efforts in fundraising have not gone unnoticed, as evidenced by the recognition from the American Heart Association for raising over $200,000. Chris's contributions have set a high standard, and she leaves enormous sneakers to fill. Chris Neal. Chris Neal's career in education spans over 4 decades, beginning as a substitute teacher and evolving into various administrative roles before returning to her passion for teaching. Highlights include managing Title I programs, serving as an assistant principal, and leading as a high school principal. Chris's dedication to her students and colleagues shines through her constant fostering of independence, encouragement to push past life's challenges, and the fastening of collegial relationships to fierce friendships, showcasing her commitment to making a difference to everyone whose path she crossed. Retirement brings opportunities for gardening, spending time with family, and mentoring future educators. Chris's career is a testament to resilience, dedication, and the profound impact one can have in shaping young minds and education overall. Congratulations. Lisa De Palma. After 14 years of dedicated service as an educational support professional at Jefferson Elementary School, Lisa is retiring. Very sad. Lisa has been a pillar of support for her colleagues, always the first to celebrate their accomplishments and offer a helping hand during challenging times. Her high expectations for students and the commitment to supporting colleagues have left a lasting impact on the community. As she steps into retirement, Lisa looks forward to pursuing her passions for health and fitness, coaching, and indulging in her love of tennis. Her presence will be greatly missed, but her legacy will continue to inspire. Congratulations.
One more.
What's that?
I think I have one more to read the person that's not here. And then we can take a picture and read the other names if we'd like. So Sharon Valentine was a cafeteria worker at Parmenter. So we fondly remember our dear cafeteria staff member, Sharon Valentine, who retired earlier this school year but sadly passed away. She was a dedicated employee known for her impeccable style and love for all things shiny and sparkly. Her kindness touched everyone she encountered, and she always went an extra mile to ensure the cafeteria was welcoming and inviting for all children, adorning it with delightful decorations. Her genuine affection for the kids was evident in her actions as she consistently went above and beyond for them. Outside of work, she cherished her beloved dog Buddy and had a passion for travel, with England being her most recent adventure. Locally, she found joy in visiting La Cantina Winery, a testament of her zest for life and appreciation of the simple pleasures. She will be dearly missed but forever remembered in our hearts. So some folks couldn't join us, so we're just going to read their names quick, and then we'll let you sit, but we're going to let you stand for a little while longer. Jane Pichette, who was a teacher at Remington. Cheryl Ferry, a media and data specialist through Lifelong Learning. Lisa White, a cafeteria worker at Remington. Mary Jane Mendez, an accounting coordinator in central office. Susan Naughton, a teacher at Franklin High School. Sheila Shamber, a teacher at Horace Mann. Sorry.
Rose O'Connor,
thank you.
an occupational therapist for the district. Wendy Ricard, an educational support professional at Keller. And Trevor Barron, a teacher at FHS. Congratulations to everyone.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Let's go through a little bit of the moment. Thank you, everyone.
I want to thank you all so much for the years and years of service to this great community. I'll be missed.
Go celebrate.
Thank you, everybody. Bye, Chris.
I'm going to take this out of order so that they can be up next. It's the district improvement goal presentation and my evidence presentation, so I figured it'd be okay if we. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Chairperson Callahan, would you be amenable to taking our agenda out of order with a vote from the committee for the purpose of, we have Roberta Trahan and we have Pandora Carlucci here from the FEF. There's an action item for a vote, but I'm thinking about the district improvement presentation and the superintendent evidence. Roberta being a former school committee member and Pandora being a former district employee understands sometimes those can take a
They
little
don't need to
while.
go through that all over
If you
again.
and the committee would be amenable to that, would you be open to taking a vote to see if we could take that out of order?
Absolutely. Is there a motion just to move the discussion action item A, FEA vote, out of order to up next?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussions, questions? Nope. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So we'll head over to discussion action item A, FEF vote.
Okay, so in your packet, you'll see a vote from the Franklin, FEF stands for Franklin Educational Foundation. And we are joined, as I said, by Roberta Trahan and Pandora Carlucci, who are here. And I recommend acceptance of the funds from the Franklin Education Foundation Incorporated, the foundation as it's known, and establishing an account to be used to support and benefit the Franklin Public Schools that are under the direction of the Franklin School Committee, including without limitation the promotion of the development of innovative curriculum, and to support key system-wide activities such as enrichment experiences through programs, equipment, and services that enhance the quality of the public education in Franklin Public Schools.
All right. Is there a motion as discussed?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Please, if you want to.
Just as Roberta comes up, we have been very fortunate to be partners with the Franklin Educational Foundation over many years, and many different opportunities and grants have been awarded in that time. I'll let Roberta and Pandora share a little bit more of the context to this, but just wanted to say, point out loud that we're so appreciative for everything that you have done, both of you have done, and the foundation has done over time to support educators. And I'll kick it over to you, Roberta.
Thank you so much. So Pandora and I here this evening, along with our colleague Dave McNeil, who's been joining us most recently as a board member of the Franklin Education Foundation. Pandora's going to give a little brief history of the Education Foundation, just so that you get a sense. But we've spent the last several years, really since COVID, trying to understand where we go from here. Life has changed. We're all different. Schools are different. Teachers are different, and the way we had set things up by doing a grant process just wasn't viable any longer. And it's been several years, as you will hear from Pandora. So we started meeting with Superintendent Giguere and Dr. Rogers, and we tried to come up with a way that we could continue the legacy of the FEF through the school committee by using these funds, as Superintendent Giguere has stated, and hopefully have that be something that can continue on. Some things to be worked out yet as far as whether folks could continue to make donations there, which could then go into that fund. So for that, we would then be bringing the foundation to a close. This has been a huge undertaking. We actually have a lawyer working with us. And there was a lot to do with the Attorney General. We had to file certain paperwork. You can't just say we're done. They have to be certain where the money is going and all of that. So we're here tonight to sort of begin to bring closure to that process by you accepting this plan, if you will. And I'd like to turn it over to Pandora for giving a little bit of the history.
It's nice to be here before the school committee tonight, and we thank you for having us, because we're bringing this to a closure with Superintendent Giguere. We began with Superintendent Warren, and we had our first meetings, Peggy Anaskewicz, Vicki Coates, and I, with Dr. Warren in 1996. We had just opened the first of the 3 combined elementary middle schools, the Remington Jefferson. And you open a state-of-the-art school. And we looked at the other schools in Franklin and how do we bring equity and innovation and excellence in education to all. And so we talked to Dr. Warren about this. And Dr. Warren, in his career, had been a postdoc fellow for the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, and he was familiar with the concept of an education foundation and what it would do. We talked about it for a year, and we began to bring together a board. Roberta was on the establishing board of the foundation, as was Reverend Dadgie Scott from the Federated Church, Bob Karras from Keefe Insurance, attorney Scott Nathan, Eugene Stone, who was president of Strata Bank, Susan Gardner, who was a parent and guardian, and Dr. Warren, who served as ex officios. We'd always worked closely with the administration. And over the years, there were dozens and dozens of parents and guardians and friends and educators who helped us to raise the funds that were then translated into grants for teachers and administrators and aides and people who gave back to our schools. And we, just to give you an idea of, one of our earliest grants was in the year 2000, and it went to Alicia Bell, an art teacher, and John McPhee, who was director of the art department at the time, and it was the very first Empty Bowls. No one had even heard of Empty Bowls. Part of it was a learning curve for all of us in the community to understand what was happening at the time, and it grew. There have been ukuleles, there have been authors coming into town, and these have allowed not only the enrichment for our students, but also opportunities for collaboration, for sharing, and they have made our education community stronger. And so you can see, it is very hard to say that this is over, but things change. We are a very different community in 2024 than we were in 1996.
And so all of our fundraising efforts, such as the many casino nights, the wizard games, the biggest thing, the spelling bees, the trivia bees, where people would come to the Horace Mann Auditorium all decked out in costumes, and the ladybug, and on it went. I mean, so many people, so many generous people, and but again, as Pandora said, things are different now. So hopefully with this money coming into this, I'll call it a revolving account for a lack of a better word. The word you used was something different, I think.
It would be in a revolving
Right,
account.
exactly. So hopefully this money will serve for many years to come to, honor the legacy of what the Franklin Education Foundation was all about. And just so that you know, we did try to sort of reinvent ourselves after the pandemic. We did. We had several meetings. We reached out to several different folks, and parents are working now full-time, sometimes 2 jobs, and it's just not the same, and there's no time for them to do this type of thing. So it is bittersweet, no doubt about it, but sometimes things have to take a natural close, and that's okay.
But we began with the school committee, and we're ending with the school committee, and we've stayed true to our mission, and that's why we wanted to come before you, so that we would be transparent and people would know what we were doing and how that funds would be transferred in an open way, true to the mission.
And we do appreciate all the time you've given us, Superintendent Dr. Rogers, really, meeting after meeting, trying to work this out and figure out, and of course, Dave being on our board as well has been so helpful to us, and we appreciate it all. And the other members of the board currently are all on board with this. They understand it, and they know that it's time that we need to do this. So, anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you all.
Just would say the mission continues. The funds that they will transfer will continue to be honored in the spirit in which it was intended, which was to look at innovative ideas that educators bring forth. We've had different processes in the past, whether it's application or it's identified through different councils or leadership teams, but that's the spirit in which the funds were collected and then go to the direct benefit of innovative ideas for students. And you heard a few. I'm thinking of Google Expedition goggles that I've seen out and about. So I think a commitment that we have is to honor that, have a process, and ultimately keep promoting how these funds are used in a way that's, it's an account, in a revolving account, and our goal would be to report out who's earning the grant funding, or if you will, for these types of purposes, so that we can continue the legacy that these two phenomenal community members that we have started, and will continue to honor what you've done. So thank you.
We really appreciate it. It's really been a load off our backs, if you will, and our hearts. Yeah, mostly our hearts.
Thank you so much. Any kind of questions, comments?
Yeah, I wanted to say, I want to express my deepest appreciation to you guys, what you have done across to our school district. I really appreciate it. You guys are really inspiring for the future generation to come.
It's been a labor of love. It's been our honor to do it. It really has. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll echo that. You guys are like my heroes here in Franklin. I mean, Roberta, gosh, we wouldn't even be having this override if it wasn't for the work you've been doing while you're just volunteering. So, yeah, thanks. You know, this town has such a history, rich in education and valuing education, and you guys have kept that alive. You know, often the narrative is, oh, well, if we don't have kids in the school, we don't care. And I know that's not true when I hang out with people like you guys that I get to see often. So, thank you. Thank you for everything. And I know your work's not done because it never is.
Never.
So,
Yes, more to
I know
come.
you'll still be helping us here in the schools. So, thank you.
Yeah, excuse me. Echoed the comments of my colleagues here. Thank you for the work that you've done. The enrichment that you helped provide definitely has not gone unnoticed, and I know that the students that have received that, the teachers that have received the funding to support their work are definitely much appreciative of this. I do have one question though. Did we identify what was the amount of the funds that was?
I hesitated to give an amount tonight because we're still in the process of paying off some legal, not to the attorney, but to the filing. You have to pay a certain amount of money to get your file to the Attorney General. So once that is complete, I will have a final number, and we will share that with you and Dr. Dutch, and you can let the rest of the committee know. It's a fairly decent amount of money. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
So I just want to take a moment to say thank you. You know, funding creativity in such a unique way is a big challenge, especially in this day and age, and being able to support our teachers and their creative efforts to really, you know, give back and help support both the community and our students. You know, really, it does take a lot. So thank you to, you know, the foundation for all their efforts there, and for really making this sustainable contribution to our community. It means a lot. So thank you.
I'm at the end of the line, so I can only offer up my thanks to and echo what's come down the line. But I think that since the theme of the night so far seems to be a round of applause, I would like to offer one to you, because you have done so much for us in our community. Thank you.
Truly, yeah, thank you so much. You know, you've made an indelible mark on the Franklin education system, and I want to, thank, the entire board members, including our own Vice Chair McNeil, for entrusting us with this legacy to continue to move forward. So, thank you very much. All right, then, unless any other questions or comments. All right, vote will come on a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And as soon as we have more information, more details to Mr. Charles's question specifically, we'll be sure to share that with everyone. Okay. All right. So next up in guest presentations, we have two things, the district improvement plan update and then we will have the superintendent's evaluation of evidence. Okay?
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I do apologize. I'm just getting a question if they want, we can get a picture with
Of course.
members from the FBF.
Yep. Roberta, can you get a photo with this? School?
Mr. Bach was just reminding us too that one of his grants that we awarded years ago is still ongoing, so there's a lot of that. That's what you've got an entire list on the board. I don't know, we have that somewhere, Laura, I'm sure.
Ready?
I've listed all the people that have served.
1, 2, 3. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh.
yeah.
Thank you. Very much. Very good. I wrote it funny again.
Okay. Ready? All right. Transitioning over. Do you want to head over to the rostrum? I'll just. Oh, wait, we can all. Let's do it. I was planning to. No, just kidding.
Mr. Jagir?
Just kidding. Okay, so we have two presentations. One is the district improvement plan. We'll start with now. This is an annual update we give on the goals that you approved earlier in the school year, and we're happy to share those with you tonight. So these will also connect to the next presentation, which is around some of the evidence towards goals, which my goals typically are district-wide goals as well, so there is some connection along the way. Pretty high up. So just to kick this off as we begin with some of our presentations to you all, is really just trying to link back to the portrait of a graduate, trying to just emphasize the work that we are trying to accomplish as a district to try to make sure that all of our students graduate from Franklin High School after a K through 12 or age 22 experience with some of these skills in mind. And you've heard us reference these in a few presentations, but ultimately wanted to call your attention. When we look at the district goals, we really aimed to have coherence and try to look at student experiences across levels. So whether you attend any of our 5 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, trying to make sure that students, as they hit each of these levels, each grade, is moving with a shared experience. And the one way that we have really worked really hard in the last 2 years is try to create alignment where it's appropriate, while still allowing for some autonomy for each school to be themselves and for each teacher in their classroom to be themselves, but also have some shared agreements on what we're educating, how we're educating, and what students are expected to know. So this just hits on the idea of at the district level, looking at level-based SIPs, which you saw and we presented in the fall. I think it might have been in October, actually. And then what are the action steps by school in order for us to meet those goals? You've seen this. This was in the last presentation when we sought approval through the goals, but basically our vision, our core values, and our theory of action. And we believe that if we create spaces for kids that are inclusive, collaborative, if we're using high-quality materials, if teachers are using high-quality teaching strategies to educate our students, then we're taking steps to make sure that the students receive the high quality of education that we expect of them in Franklin. So these are the 5 areas for the strategic objectives, and you'll see these goals have been pretty consistent over the last few years since we've developed them, and we'll break these down into further detail as we move forward.
Our first strategic objective is the social and emotional well-being of our students and staff. So our FY23 outcomes was our enhanced 6 to 12 advisory program, a coherent system for screening and monitoring students' SEL support and progress, tiered responses and interventions related to the code of conduct and character, as well as tracking our students' behavior and attendance trends using Panorama. So our progress to date, so we do now have our consistent screening practices pre-K through 12. We're at the pre-K level, we're using the EDECA for students that have identified with some social emotional challenges. Grades K to 5, we're using the DESA consistently across the district. So we start at the beginning, we screen the students twice a year with the DESA. This year, in grades 5 and 6, we did a survey where the students took a survey themselves about their social and emotional well-being and connectedness to school, and we did that in grades 5 to 6, so we can then move to next year of seeing the growth for those students. And we just piloted with those 2 grade levels right now. In grades 6 to 12, this year we did our Metro West Adolescent Health Survey in grades 7 through 12. If you remember, that's done every 2 years. We also continued with our mood check or our signs of suicide in grades 7 and 9, and the SBIRT in grades 8 to 10. So those were all completed as of this date.
Can you just break down a few of the acronyms as far as what they...
I had to
Well,
feel
you don't have to memorize the acronym. But
SBIRT, I'm not
that's okay.
sure.
SBIRT, for example, could you just talk a little bit about what each of these screens, at least the SBIRT one, and...
You did have to ask me that, right? Yeah. SBIRT is on, if I remember correctly, is on drug and alcohol and substance use, and then how often they've done that and if they've done that and whatnot. And it's a quick 5-minute screening that either our school counselor, social worker, or some of our nurses conduct with the students. So it's a one-to-one screening. It's not a survey. It's an actual in-person screening, individualized screening. Okay. Then we our teams in each of our schools analyzed this data in their data team meetings. And then we continued the implementation of the high school and middle school advisory program. We also then continued to use the discipline matrix consistently across the districts. We had more consistency in what disciplinary consequences there were for infractions. And then we continued to explore the student success platform to track those student behaviors in the Panorama system. The other thing we did as well is at the middle level, where we are starting to record disciplinary infractions also in our Aspen system. So that was something we just started so that we could do some office referrals and whatnot to be more consistent across the district, and it aligns with what we're doing at the high school. So our next steps is we're going to continue our SEL screenings. We're going to look to refine some processes because in the DESA they came out with a new version that's aligned with second steps. So we're going to take a closer look at that, see if we want to go to a different version of the DESA for next year. And also continue to look at some surveys that students can take themselves, because sometimes if a teacher's doing the survey for the student, you'll get a different measure or different data than if a student surveys. We're going to continue to look at our advisory program and how to improve it. We're going to continue to develop our SEL tiered system support. So across our district, especially at the elementary and middle level, we do consistently tier 2 and tier 3 SEL tiered supports. I mean, yes, but we really need to expand our tier 1 supports where our counselors can go into the classroom and do some whole class interventions and lessons and whatnot. Our counselors are really doing that smaller group or individualized interventions right now. And then continue our professional development with Panorama. So our counseling staff really wants to dive deeper into the Panorama and how to use that, how to analyze that data and use that data more efficiently. And as well as continuing to revise and review our discipline matrix and utilizing Panorama during our IST meetings.
If I could just add to the second step is an advisory, it's an SEL curriculum that's research-based that we have at the elementary and middle level. Mm-hmm. So this program that's now screening and giving information on students has now partnered with the program that we already have in place to say, oh, if students need help with relationship skills or self-regulation, here are some recommendations on how you could build those skills in a young person. And we have access to those resources already. So just wanted to point that out when we think about systems and synergy and alignment, is trying to look at how do we use what we have and not keep creating new rollouts of new information and new context. All this takes time, but certainly it's a piece that I just wanted to point out as well.
Okay,
Okay, so as we move into strategic objective 2, we're talking more here about engaging in rigorous curriculum. So we have those 2 initiatives you see here, which is developing and refining a guaranteed and viable curriculum, and then our multi-year phased pre-K-12 literacy action plan. And so the outcomes we established at the beginning of the year were to establish a process for reviewing and developing curriculum and structures, and continue to strengthen structures for literacy curriculum implementation and development. So connected to those 2 initiatives, that 2A here, you'll see the progress to date. So we have, this is the 3rd year and a 3rd year goal of developing and refining a 9-12 stage 1 of a universally understanding by design curriculum unit. So all of the course-like partners at the high school work together to develop that stage 1, where we're identifying essential and enduring understandings, essential questions, and so that we can guarantee that regardless of what Algebra 1 teacher you have or US History 1 teacher you have, that everybody's teaching the same scope and sequence and curriculum. And so we're working to, you'll see, and I'll just connect it to the next step, working to publish that stage 1 of that curriculum and connect it to the high school program of studies, so that parents, students will really be able to get a more in-depth view as to what does a US 1 curriculum look like. And then as it relates to the next step connected to that is we're beginning to work into stage 2, which is when you talk about assessment. So you start with your standards, you start with your overarching goals in stage 1, and then you move into assessment. And so we'll be looking to bring course-alike partners together next year to start that conversation so that we have more alignment there. In addition, we have worked this year to implement some pre-K-8 high-quality instructional resources. As we all know, this is never a one-year approach. I think you'll see in the 2B that we talk about this as year 0, year 1, but this is really a multi-phased approach. So here's just a few examples that we listed, but Scholastic, Pre-K on My Way, Illustrative Mathematics, ST Math, Bridges, Into Reading, Open SciEd. These are just a few examples of curriculum resources that are of high quality, standards aligned, but that are now in our classrooms, in our teachers' hands, and now we just need to make sure that we're continuing to provide the time and the professional learning associated with really implementing those programmatic resources. And so that you'll see in our next step is that continued commitment to professional learning as it relates to the implementation of those high quality resources. And then connected to that, which I'm very excited about, Dr. Frazier and Mr. Stark have worked closely with me around drafting a curriculum revision review cycle. So this is really in draft form, but ultimately it's a 5-phase cycle. So here we've listed out phase 1 is implement, phase 2 is monitor and reflect, phase 3 being study, 4 plan, and 5 present. So this is all connected to the kind of the fiscal responsibility as it relates to curriculum implementation, the professional development as it relates to, and then if you think about, this has been quite an undertaking because you think about not only every, graduation requirement at the high school, but every elective that students take. Like all of those different courses require an investment of time from teachers in working with the new resources and developing curriculum, of financial resources to be able to purchase, whether it's licenses or the curriculum materials to be in front of students or whatever that may be. And then if you think about elementary teachers, they're not only just teaching, or even high school and middle school teachers, they're not just always teaching one content. And so it's really making sure that we're doing this in a phased way, that we honor the work that teachers are doing, so we're not inundating them with multiple implementations in one year, but then we're also really planning and able to predict our financial commitments as it relates to curriculum revision. So this is in a draft form right now. We've started to kind of iron out like the details of what that will look like over time, and we're looking to bring that to get some feedback from folks in the Franklin Public School community next year to be able to kind of solidify that. And we're still collecting, as you can imagine, with all the courses running. When's the last time we invested in personal finance at the high school or in things like that? So really making sure to align all those different aspects to the curriculum revision process. So there'll certainly be more to come next year on that. And then as it relates to the pre-K-12 literacy action plan, this year we really tried to call this year at the K-5 and pre-K level year 0, where we're trying to say, like, let's take this year of learning. Nothing's perfect. Let's try to get a little bit messy with it, but focus on some consistent instructional routines. So we share just a few here, but there are more: structured literacy, close reading, discussion routines, but commit to a few instructional routines. Bring some folks in from the vendor. Have teachers work in grade level common professional time with the literacy specialist to really dig into their learning around the curriculum and see what questions that they have, to be able to target some more of that continued professional learning and collaboration, because really it comes down to the time for folks to work together to really dig in for a successful implementation. And then as it relates to next year, it's kind of, again, continuing, I would say. When you're in year now official 1 or year 2 of a curriculum implementation, teachers are a bit more comfortable with how the program may be set up, what resources in there are valuable, what maybe we haven't found much success with that we have to ask a few more questions about, commitment more to some of the assessment routines within the program. And so really working to reflect on year 1 and to continue to monitor and provide professional learning opportunities. Because this, again, we were grateful to have capital funds to support the implementation of this, but it just goes to show you that big of a commitment is certainly a multi-year implementation. So we'll be continuing that work into next year as well. And then as it relates to objective 3, high quality instruction to meet the academic and SEL needs of each learner. This we really focused here on our professional development planning and our tiered structures and data analysis processes. So as it relates to staff capacity, I'm really excited about the expansion of our professional development committee and the collaboration there. I know Donna's here with us, and we've talked about next year about continuing to expand this, but we went from a committee meeting 2 or 3 times a year to 8. And so really giving that group of folks, which we're trying to continue to get more folks involved in that process, but really ensuring that we have a variety of educators at the table who are part of planning these professional development experiences, because we're really looking to expand. There's so much knowledge base here, so it's not always about bringing experts in and consultants from the outside, though that's a part of it, but really honoring the expertise here and honoring the time for those individuals to share that with others. So we're excited about some opportunities that the PD committee will be sharing in a June newsletter around next year's PD planning, from bringing outside folks in to ways that we are trying to think innovatively to get more folks internally to share those and collaborate with others on those professional learning days. So that's really exciting. We developed, so that's bullet 2. We developed 23-24 professional learning plan. Still a focus on universal design for learning and expanding into other avenues as well. And just as it relates to, we have brought some external presenters in to both support multilingual learners and instructional practices that support multilingual learners in the content classrooms to, folks supporting UDL. And I think now we're at a place where a little bit of that is probably still advantageous, but I think we have, again, a wealth of expertise internally, so looking to leverage that. And then as it relates to 3B, we have really tried to extend and expand our data practices and really think about what are the assessment tools that we're using to ensure that when we have tier 2 or tier 3 academic supports for students, that we're able to monitor those. And Ms. Morano spoke to Panorama. We have worked with a team so just by way of example, one area, at the end of this year, we have all 5th grade academic interventions being entered into the Panorama system. And the goal there was to say, let's work the muscle to how to utilize the system and get all that data in. And then as those students transfer to the middle schools, now that academic data is moving with those students, so that next year, if Tina is struggling a bit with operations and algebraic thinking, there's a little bit of information there that moves with the child, so that my teacher doesn't have to go over to the middle school or give the elementary school a call to kind of ask some questions. So we're really trying to be consistent in the way that we're approaching that. And so that was just one example. There's other ways, but that we're starting to utilize that tool more. And then we have done more extensive training with building-based instructional leadership teams, which include counselors, specialists, coordinators, those folks, into building out this system more. And so the goal as we move into next year is to continue to further align our support, tiered supports, but also expand panorama use to all staff. And that would be in a phased kind of way, not just to throw it on folks all at once.
Okay, so strategic objective number 4. In here, 4A talks about the comprehensive school facilities assessment that was conducted this school year. And the second is around communication, community partnerships, and various school-based teams initiatives. So moving to here, 4A, you are aware, I think at this point, of the school comprehensive school facilities assessment, the recommendation and approval and the details of that. But ultimately, the outcomes, we're working to obtain the planner, work with the architects, the demographers, to update our enrollment, engage our stakeholders in those focus groups, in those meetings, the school facilities assessment of the physical spaces, and then ultimately landing with a master facilities plan that had recommendations for short, mid, and long-term goals. And ultimately, the next steps are to implement those plans, which we have begun. The school committee also, as you know, had recommendations as well on top of that around how we're structuring this and communicating. So that was 4A of our district goal, our district plan. The second piece is around just strengthening community partnerships. So we've engaged with a variety of community. Some are new partnerships, some are existing but strengthened. And the food pantry, the Franklin Fire Department, Dean College are all areas in which we've begun to build a partnership with, whether it's supporting them through their grant funding, participating in the weekend backpack program, working with Dean College around some mentoring opportunities for students, and also Franklin Fire Department, initial conversations around how we can continue to develop, to look to serve multiple needs. One on their end around trying to have qualified folks that are interested in that service and being a part of it, while also looking to see where we can offer credentialing for students as they continue through Franklin High School to kind of build that out. The other piece is the new website. That is an area behind the scenes where it's intended this summer to be transition and go live, but there's been work on the back end that we've had to coordinate with the technology department, with the new website company, to carry forth information and make sure it's set up and structured in a way that allows us to have information available to folks through the website and the app. This one.
So the last strategic objective focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So this was really done through structured school visits, student support groups, and continued development with the equity action plan. And I think I'm just going to move us here. So we continue to engage middle school peer leaders in using a world of difference through the ADL curriculum. Actually, some of those lessons are coming up later this week. And so we're really going to work to extend that peer leader curriculum. A world of ADL is actually not moving forward with a world of difference as they continue into next year. We've really been committed to a world of difference, curriculum, and kind of made it our own. So we are looking to continue with that next year, and then continue collaboration with the ADL to see where things move there. We've developed, as you've heard, the advisory curriculum at the middle and high school, so that we still need to do a bit of work there. We've actually gotten some input from students along the way this year on ways in which we could think about improving that curriculum. So we're looking forward to doing that next year. We've continued to engage in monthly DEI committee meetings where we're looking to grow that involvement and have folks from every school be represented there and be kind of the liaison between the DEI committee work and the school, because we know no one committee can do it all, that we need to really be able to spread that knowledge throughout. And then I think as it relates to our commitment to professional learning is continuing to provide professional learning connected to areas and topics related to DEI and belongings. Particularly this year, we've provided culturally responsive practice through both full-day PD offerings and also at individual schools. At Oak Street Elementary, they're hosting a trauma-informed college course, which kind of sold out immediately. It booked up immediately when it went out to staff. So looking to continue those kind of PD opportunities and collaborations as we move into next year. And then as it relates to partnering with families and schools, we continue to partner at school-based, have a plethora. I think if you all have children in the school, know how many school-based opportunities are we try to engage families, but really continue to be thoughtful around doing a variety of different, having a variety of different opportunities. So we just listed a few there. We continue to revise the discipline matrix and having really that lens of equity as we do that work. And both Ms. Morano and I try to collaborate and engage with CPAC, the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, and then we're inviting families to now join an English Learner Parent Advisory Council. So we'll have our first kind of meet and greet. I have to get the date for you. I can get it for you, but June, maybe it's a Thursday. We're doing it at the Franklin Food Pantry. And so invitations have gone out to families who speak a language other than English in their native language to invite them in to join us. So we're hoping to get that launched as we move into next year. But that has to really come from the group and the community. Can't be something that we chair and do. So we're looking to just start that process now.
Thank you all very much. We'll start down here on the right.
Yeah. I think I just have one question at the moment. This is great. Thanks for the presentation. On that first slide section, the social emotional, where you're talking about all the screenings, what actions are, I don't know how quickly you get results from screenings, what does that process look like, and how you make changes within the schools based on information that you're bringing in from the surveys?
The EDEC and the DESER screenings are immediate. So from that, then the teams decide if they need a more extensive screening so with more questions to go a little bit more in depth and really pinpoint the areas of need and growth, and then they're put into an intervention group and then provided that intervention. The SEL survey, it's new to us, so we get the results within a few weeks once we close the survey. So now we just did that at the beginning of May, so our teams are just looking at that data now and analyzing that data. The Metro West data was just released today, so we're just starting to dive into that, and we have a PD with the Metro West Foundation in June that we're going to look at that. Again, signs of suicide screenings, it's immediate. We contract out with clinicians from Brown University to provide that screening for us, and they're right in, they're identifying students who are in need, they're doing maybe more extensive screening, or else they're connecting them with some outside services.
And communicating with the families.
And communicating with the families, correct. Directly. And then the SBIRT, same idea. As soon as we get their screening results immediately, parents are notified if they need to be, and then all that data gets uploaded into the state portal, which I'll be doing by the end of June. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's great to know, because I wasn't sure, between the different screening types, whether some were student specific and you could respond to those kids versus, coming back at a later time and you can implement changes.
They're all student specific with the exception of Metro West.
Right. Okay.
So.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So my question is actually focused on objective 4, and looking at 4B, the outcome, looking at how you're engaging with some of the community partners. I was missing kind of the action steps, kind of what we can look at next, what some of the up and coming steps there might be to help to expand on that. I don't know if you can go into any detail on that section.
Right, so for partners with food pantry, with Dean, all of them, so I can talk through each of them individually. So I mentioned a little bit of the fire department. It's a little bit predicated on our bandwidth and our ability to look at coursework and align it, particularly in the budget situation we're in, to try to look at that as an addition. It could be something we do outside of the school day. With the food pantry, one area that we have expanded is our weekend backpack program happens across all of our elementaries. Mrs. Morano and I visited about 2 months ago to look at their new facility and look at what they're offering. There has been some discussions around, are there ways to look at food waste differently? Can we look to see with school lunch and some of the food that it's perishable, so by state law, if it's not contained in the appropriate environment over time, you can't really utilize it you have to discard some of that. But there has been talk about, with the food service director as well, around exploring opportunities to say, could that be reutilized if we had the proper, not machinery, appliances, I guess, to preserve food in a way that could make it last. So we've engaged in some of those conversations, but that's one that I think we would look to continue to expand and see if that's even possible. They've talked about food lockers that you've probably seen in other areas and communities around that. The third, Dean College, one of the steps we took was to invite the president to join us for our Portrait of a Graduate Envisioning. Since then, they've held coffee hours as well. While we look at expanding our early college, it's most likely won't be through Dean College at this stage, but the partnership is, we were all invited when we met with the fire department to look at, they used to offer the EMT class, and now they no longer are, as they've looked to evolve their programming. So the conversation was, well, if the EMT class, if you take if you get trained and then you take the course by your 18th birthday, you'd have, if you could have EMT coursework and the passing grade for that done by 18, we did talk with Dean around the paramedic part of it and saying, okay, if students are eligible and ready at 18 to start that leg of it, because it takes about 200 hours, 300 hours to get your EMT. So the thought was, could we bridge that and create a bit of a feeder where we're able to try to work that. So those are all pieces that are all predicated and contingent upon having the programming, but certainly we talked a little bit about that at one of the budget presentations, but certainly is an area that we're interested in. I think it's a win-win for us to help support student growth at an individual level. I think it prepares people who are interested in the fire service to be qualified and kind of move through that in a more expeditious way. But ultimately, those were just a few examples of the partnerships.
I can share one more.
Go ahead.
We recently met with Dean College, so the president of Dean College, folks from CIEE, which it's an acronym, I know. I just don't know what their company stands for. The logo stands for, but I'll get it to you in a minute. And our department head for the guidance department at the high school, and I went over to meet with them, and Dean College is partnering with CIEE, which is similar to a study abroad program, not necessarily connected to the 1 week study abroad or international tours that are not tours and vacations. The international programming that our students go in trips. Thank you, my goodness. But this is more of like a in-depth cultural experience that they may send students abroad for a year, after they graduate senior year, or maybe juniors in their summer, and they support students with going to visit the global worlds that we live in and embark on these trips in which they can earn college credits. And so Dean College is partnering with them, and so we've been kind of connecting with them to see how could we align this opportunity for some of our students who maybe they either are considering not going straight into college right after graduation, or maybe want some more global experiences. Like I think about Northeastern University is one that comes to top of mind for me, that often, or sometimes accepts students, but accepts them in, I think University of Miami does this a lot now too, but accepts them into their school, but through an international program first in another community. And so Dean Colleges is partnering to be able to give college credit to students who do this. So we've been kind of working with and connecting. Thank you. It's CIE, is the Council on International Educational Exchange. So we're working to partner with them to see what types of opportunities, thank you very much, Steve, we can bring in to offer our students as well. Just another.
And just some other community organizations we've extended our partnerships with the SAFE Coalition. We used to work with them for the substance use diversion program, but now we've expanded to middle school. And we've also reached out to them if we have students who suddenly become homeless and need some support in that way. We're working with Franklin PD, the social workers from Franklin PD as well, to help us with our students and families who might become homeless or need that mental health support, as well as other area organizations helping our students with mental health needs and homelessness. The Interfaith Council as well, St. Vincent de Paul. We really reach out to the area because, you know, unfortunately, sometimes the school system becomes the social service agency as well. So if we can tap into our community partners to help us out and support our students and families, we do it as soon as we can.
Awesome. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, so thank you for the update. So just given where we're at from a budget standpoint, are any of the action items at risk if we don't meet the budget that we are asking for?
Any type of academic programming would be on the table for, we need to prioritize, obviously, the coursework students need to earn a diploma, for example, at a high school, but ultimately, that's one piece. The other piece is, as we think about, an underfunded budget, we start to look at programming in general, and I think those are where we have been taking a very close look for obvious reasons, just trying to prepare ourselves with what was approved for our budget with what's, in the context of the big picture with June coming. I think what we're trying to do is try to figure out what types of supports, what can we do with the funding that we have. But there would be some impacts to us to be able to really push in some of these and move some of these initiatives forward.
Okay, thank you. And then there was mention of the expanding of advisory. Can you elaborate on what does that look like?
So I think this is year 2 of our advisory program at both the middle and the high school. And I think the goal was to engage educators and administrators in developing it. Well, we have Second Step, as Mr. Jaguar shared earlier, as a kind of a core base, but really develop a curriculum for that advisory time that's responsive to our students from all the data that, is being collected, and just really the needs in particular here, because I don't think any, out-of-the-box curriculum is ever the answer for anything. We always need to kind of innovate and adapt. So I think that's where we're at with that. And also just some of the both anecdotal feedback that Ms. Morano and I got from some of the student focus groups is I think that, we got to engage the students in the conversations a little bit more around what they feel the need is. And I'll give you one example. When we were talking with them around Portrait of a Graduate, multiple students on a couple different times actually said, this is kind of a really cool thing that I don't hear a lot about all the time, and I can see how it's connected sometimes, but I think we could really use advisory to kind of dig into POG and what that means and what that looks like for me in the class. And so that just kind of got us thinking a bit more. So that's just one example. But again, we need the time and the resources to be able to do that. And right now, what I will say is we have 2 incredible educators, one teacher and one administrator at the middle level, who are it's a Herculean effort for them, but the 2 of them have, and I know this is, other folks were involved in previous years, but are doing the vast majority of the work to develop that. And I think we just need to expand, the folks that are involved in that process of developing the curriculum, because 2 people can't do it alone. And so, Yeah, I don't know if you have anything else.
No, I mean, I think, yeah, some of the feedback we've received is the students aren't finding it very engaging. So we got to really look at that and see how we can make it more engaging and more so that they can actually benefit or get something out of it. And it's not just a lesson that's delivered and that's it.
Yep, okay, great, thank you.
Thank you all for this update and this presentation. I have a question. So, we were hearing a lot about the new literacy curriculum update for a long time, and a lot went into that. And yeah, thank you for starting that implementation. So this this curriculum review cycle definitely makes a lot of sense to me, and it sounds like an exciting idea to make sure that we're updating, innovating, and looking for new ways to improve upon the education curriculum that we're giving. So could you maybe just flesh out a little bit what that would look like? So would it be like, for example, math would be 1 year, science 1 year, history another year, then like each of the 5 phases takes a year, or like what does that, what's that going to look like?
That's a good question. Do you want me to start?
Please.
Yeah. So, yes, so I think you're spot on. So each.
All right, thank you.
Nice job.
Mic drop. So each phase would have, would be a year of time. And what we're really working to do now is, you should see like the charts and table. We tried to do it on a whiteboard. We transitioned it to a Google Doc, but we're collecting the data from all the different departments, from all the different levels to understand when did we purchase or have a financial commitment to a curriculum resource in all of the variety of academic areas. So like a K-5 literacy is a little easier to pinpoint, but personal finance is not so easy, or the AP psych books when the license was 1 year and the books were another. So we're really trying to unpack all of that to ensure that we are financially aligning our curriculum implementation cycle, and also not, again, taxing the teachers that might be teaching multiple subjects in 1 year. So the phases, the end result in that 5th year would result in a school committee presentation of whatever curriculum might be being purchased, to then fold into, then you now move 5 years from there. So then you implement in year 1 or year 0, however, we're not numbering them, but when you implement, and then that year 2 is monitor and reflect, which should be year 2 and 3 for teachers should be more of the down years, where year 1 is like that heavy year of front loading and implementation. Year 2 and 3, where you're monitoring and reflecting and studying, is more of saying, let's take a breath, let's adapt, let's, like we had said before, there's no box of curriculum that's going to be the solution. So what do we need to adjust and monitor as we go? And then the 4th year being, let's plan and look ahead and do some research to see what's out there, to then come before you to present. So, but yes, it's each phase is a year.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation.
I wasn't on the school committee previous years, but I remember when you first implemented the panorama and the discussions. Is that, like, I heard you reference going into Aspen 2. So like if a teacher, I just want to know what that looks like. So a teacher is in high school, so the panorama starts ideally 5th to 6th.
Kindergarten.
It starts that young.
Yep.
And that has, what kind of information does that have on it as opposed to what Aspen has on it?
Sure. Let me start. So it has hopefully every data point that we could ever want to see, to give us like the full picture of a student from academic to SEL. So for an elementary school student, it will have the MAP growth results, elementary and middle school students. That'll have report card grades, or, in elementary we have M's and P's. It'll have, that data will be pulled in. There'll be SEL data pulled in, the panorama survey that the students took will be there. DIBELS data will be pulled in, so all those academic attendance, behavior, yep. So it's really this full picture, and then it allows us to kind of analyze data in a multitude of different ways, SATs, MCAS, all of that information.
So instead of having multiple spreadsheets that most of our teams had, it's all in one database and platform.
Right, and it's still fairly new, right, to the district?
It is new to the district, and it's taken us a while to roll it out. There's a lot on the back end that needed to be done to get the data into the system, and that's, it's kind of made things go a little slower than we wanted to. But.
So for example, it's pulling in attendance data from Aspen, MCAS data.
From the state.
Right, it's pulling in DESA from a different system. It can pull in its own survey information, and then grade books, and then you heard us talk about other academic assessments that you plug into this. So it's pulling it all, and it's having it all available for one student, Lucas Jaguar, and then it has all of that information. But on the back end, if that's not really clean and clear, before you roll that out to a group of people who are already working really hard with 1,000 things, we want to make sure it's not flawed from the drop. So you have to make sure all that's working, and that's what Tina and Paula have been partnering to do, is lead the leaders through, and some of our curriculum leaders through, to get familiar with the system. But ultimately, as you heard, it provides an opportunity to look at all that information in one spot, and then you set thresholds. If attendance over 5 absences is something we're concerned with, it'll color code a red line that tells you that's beyond the threshold. If we're looking at a grade point average that's below a C, I'm making this up, it could do a yellow and then a red. So it starts to look at all of those indicators across the board, and you get a spectrum on all the data we have on a student all in one area that we can look at and say, okay. And then once we start to roll that out to our educators, they'll have access to that as well too, to kind of look at, okay, how is this looking in this moment and in the teams.
And the one thing I would add to that is the data that we now know is accurate in there, but we also have the ability to add data manually. So when you think about the amount of educators we have, and if we're all adding information in that might not be aligned in our processes, then the data is not necessarily as useful. And so that's why I use the one example of the 5th grade. So when you think about tier supports from counselors and SEL practices to interventionists and math and literacy specialists, say at the elementary level, like if everyone's not entering that tiered academic or SEL data into a system systematically, then it's really hard to use the data. So that's what we've been trying to spend this year doing. Last year was like, is the data accurate? How are we pulling it all in? And knowing how do we log in and use it? And now we're working on the systems in which we all so we're aligned in the way in which we're implementing, so that the back end, when we're analyzing the data, we're analyzing the same data.
Right. Yeah, I would imagine that's going to be helpful. The more you use it, the more it's going to benefit the district. But I can imagine it tough in the beginning, just getting it all going. But I've heard there must be some teachers using it, because I've had feedback from teachers that, like, if I get a second to actually look at the panorama, it's really cool. But bandwidth, budget problems.
Absolutely.
But, so I've heard good feedback, because I remember at the beginning of it, I would hear teachers be like, it's just something new we have to look at, but it's all encompassing, so it's supposed to get better. I liked when you mentioned professional development and trying to kind of use some of our own educators. I was curious, I'm sure when we have to bring in, professional development, they're receiving a payment for that contract or whatnot. Can we pay in district if we have somebody with those capabilities? Is that something we can do, give a stipend to somebody who's able to, I'm just kind of curious.
Sure.
So I think a lot of teachers work part-time jobs.
Yeah.
Could this be another avenue for them?
Yeah, so we stipend our coordinators is one example, and they are delivering professional development every month at department meetings, like our department heads, our directors, our middle school subject coordinators. Those folks are tasked every single month with providing PD. We are looking, as a PD committee, we were looking for creative ways to how do we honor folks' time. I would say it's not direct additional payment, but where can we find the time during the school day to provide those folks with time to prepare for PD? But
I just wanted to kind of shout out to, I got to be a judge at the senior projects, and my room, I was joking around because Mr. Jaguar came in at the end, and I was like, we had 4 that did it with the police station. 1 was an assistant music teacher, 1 was an assistant to a special educator. And I just thought it was a little funny, just because I'm kind of like the budget override girl, that anybody who did anything in a municipal civic service, when asked at the end, is this a career you might consider? They're like, no, like every time. So it was a good learning opportunity for these kids to kind of get to be in shoes of educators and also like firefighters. And that was a really awesome program.
I always say there's value in knowing that you don't want to do something as much as there is in wanting to. So I
have a newfound respect, but I don't want to do it.
I had a few students in the same boat, and I gave that advice to them and their parents. And I just said, it's probably okay that he knows he does not want to go into medicine now as a result of his experience, because it would have been tough to start doing that college coursework and realize that later. You don't want to do that. So.
And eventually we'll all just be, citizens, and we'll appreciate the service providers in our town. But yeah, that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a great improvement plan. Out of the whole contest, looking at, is there any special initiative for the underperformed students? Like underperformed students, like.
So for underperforming students, what was the first part of the question?
Is there any initiative in the whole plan?
Yes. You can speak.
Yep. Yeah, so strategic objective 2 and or 3, when we talk about tiered supports, 3. Well, I would say 2. So 2 and 3. So there are some curriculum specifically that we've purchased to support students. So listed here, particularly Bridges and the elementary school, is an additional curriculum resource that was purchased to support Tier 2 academic intervention. So students that are maybe struggling in a specific unit of study could be put into a 6 or an 8 week intervention cycle that utilizes that curriculum resource. So I would say that that's one area here. I would say holistically too, when we talk high quality instructional materials that are standards aligned and engaging for students, I would say that absolutely supports students who may be struggling in one particular academic area. And then I think as we leverage 3B here, when we talk about our data systems and our tiered supports for students, that particularly there is speaking specifically to students who what are the structures and support we put in place for students who are struggling?
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I want to expand on a couple of things some of my colleagues had mentioned. So one, just in terms of the panorama, because that has been something that's been talked about, for a while. And first, I've always appreciated the methodical rollout of the program, as opposed to just to kind of throw it out there and hope it works. So, there's been a lot of concern about just kind of with this transition, what we're going to look like, how like the fall of 25 is going to shape up, and specifically how will we be able to kind of monitor the students' success in a lot of these new, working models that they'll learning models that they'll be in. So how would we be able to kind of leverage things like assessments like Panorama, just to kind of see, all right, we're putting all these, middle schoolers all together. How's that going to go? We got, elementary schools at bigger complexes. How's that going to go? Might be able to kind of provide any insight there.
So I think it starts with the curriculum first, even before Panorama. So I think every curriculum that we've put in place, as if we're talking specifically K-8, every curriculum, we have not purchased or moved forward with something unless we could do it for all. So one that I can draw your attention to is ST Math. We wrote grants 3 years ago, and we couldn't get grants for all. And so we said, well, we're not doing it if we can't. And so we were able to work with the company to slowly phase in an implementation. So though folks didn't know, some schools qualified for the grant. We found some funding for 1 year when we put a pause and said to them, we can't continue with this unless we have all of our schools on, and then found a different funding source for the other schools. So things like that, I think, are really setting us up for success. Similarly, Open SciEd at the middle school. We're now going into year 3 of that. That was another grant-funded program, but we said, they knew we can't do it unless we have all 3 schools. So I think foundationally it starts there, and those are just 2 examples, but that I think goes across all, from SEL supports to academic supports across all of the schools, has really been a priority for us. And then I think as it relates to the panorama and tracking students' data, absolutely. I think that's where we're at, is all that data is being pulled in, we know, from the different systems. But now as it relates to us inputting that tier 2 support from an SEL perspective and from an academic perspective, and being really locked in every single school to say, this is the way in which we're going to enter this data, so that when we are together and analyzing this data, that we have the same protocols and structure and systems for doing that work.
The systems follow the student too, it's important to know. So as we look at where students attend school, their school name changes, but all that information around a student is connected to the student, and then where they are enrolled is where the adults who are assigned to those students have access. It's similar for Aspen as well. Everything follows the student. That's how we assign all the programming, anything to of this nature. And I would just point out too, we talked a little bit about this last meeting, but the idea of, if this is following students and teams are being introduced to use this information, and you have, if the middle school is together and a third of that middle school is on the left-hand side going through the Oak Street entrance and positioned and has classes on that side, you're going to have teams of people who are assigned to work with the 6th grade. 7th and 8th, the same idea, having them strategically placed in specific areas of the building as cohorts is where you start to look at to get that alignment. So that's how a big school becomes a smaller environment as you look at it across the board. So just to point out a few of those things. And Aspen also, the Aspen behavioral module, where Mrs. Morano talked about having referrals for students, whether they're referrals around concern or around conduct violations. If it's replicated as the high school, that's also available in Panorama and or outside in Aspen as well. But the referral process is a way that we start to get more consistency and have that electronically, so we can track that information better.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Sure.
And then also too, just, the district improvement plans, they're great, and like the next steps are really exciting to see, what can happen for our Franklin students in really just like the coming years. And just to kind of echo what my colleague, Mr. Charles had mentioned, that, this is, only possible with a fully funded budget. And that's why it's just so incredibly important that we, the schools do have the funds necessary to continue to implement all of these great next steps from year over year, because it is, Superintendent, you stated, that you would need to prioritize the coursework required for a diploma. And I understand that, that's tough to hear. And I'm sure it's equally difficult to say.
It is.
As well, when we've seen so many great, just today, some amazing teachers, some wonderful students, and all their years and years of hard work. And without a fully funded budget, that's what we'll be left to do, is just to prioritize, just the bare bones requirements of what's needed to walk across the graduation stage. And so it's scary, it's tough, but it does need to be said, because it's the truth. Any other kind of questions, comments?
I was just going to mention the word rigorous is in there a couple times. Fran Locker would be upset. She likes vigorous. Yes. Right. Not that we never. I just thinking of Fran.
All right.
So just next steps, just so you know, we have our annual, it'll be our 3rd annual pre-treat, which is right after school gets out, where we come together and debrief the year. But then we also look at what are the next steps that we've identified, and that becomes part of the summer work. So you'll hear us reference this in the fall. But basically the idea of these next steps now, once we conclude this year, become the working group. We put admin from all levels together to be part of the next phase of how do we move these things forward. That happens throughout the summer. We develop that into plans by August. We have plans for our retreat, administrative retreat, that we solidify and then build out those steps. And then that's what you see in the fall, sometime in September, October-ish, where you see the new district improvement plan with those goals and how that's laid out. So just to kind of continue the process, that's what happens as a result of this update and moving forward.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. All right, good. All right, next up. Anybody need a stretch?
You know, we were on a roll with some quick meetings for a while there.
I know. It's an accordion sometimes.
Coming up on 9.
All right, well, I'm going to move. Okay, so I'm pleased to present my evidence to you all for the 23-24 school year. And the superintendent, although I'm evaluated on my goals and standards and indicators, it's actually a team effort. And I just would point out that the work that I am sharing tonight could not be done alone, and it's a result of the whole team. And when I say the whole team, I mean all folks involved. Our central office team, our leaders, our educator leaders who are involved in various aspects of the work that we do across the board, and ultimately our educators. So I just would say that it's a reflection of the work of many people. On your desk, you should have received a printout. There's an electronic copy as well. I love this quote. I'll never stop using it. I think it's going to be something I have maybe forever. You know, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And the goal we've had is really trying to create systems that allow us to be successful across the board. So table of contents, just to break this down, I had 4 goals that were approved in November of 2023. They were built off of what you just saw, which was the district improvement plan. And also, as part of the evaluation of a superintendent, I not only pick out those 4 goal areas that are approved, but also in those standards and indicators. As an educator, we all have standards 1, 2, 3, and 4. We identified with the subcommittee for the superintendent eval a few other indicators that I would report out tonight. Okay, so that kind of frames how this is organized. The first goal was my professional practice goal, kind of how am I working on things that help me grow professionally. And it was to continue into year 2 and participating in the new superintendent induction program. So when my goals were approved, we had listed some key actions and processes. The outcomes now, that right-hand column, is where I've provided more evidence, and I've provided basically 3 paragraphs to describe what's occurred throughout the year, how does this evidence connect it to it and relate, and I hope that's helpful to all of you. But basically I will say that this program has been very, very helpful for me to develop as an educator. There's 15 sessions that occur from the summer through the school year where I meet with a cohort of new superintendents in year 2. And basically we had 22 last year. I think we're down to like 15 at this point. But ultimately, we continue this work, and I have my mentor who has come to this meeting in previous years, Dr. Michael Sullivan. He comes to visit every few months. He'll come and visit either with my team to observe me. He'll meet with me individually. We've done school walks, and I found that to be very, very helpful. And I often will try to pick key times where I'm either going to be presenting something, or I'm drafting something, or we're in the midst where I hand it to him without a lot of context, and he picks it apart and tells you, have you thought of this? Have you thought of this? I just find that to be an additional part, and that's all part of this program. It's all connected. So with that, I shared a few sample agendas. I provided the calendar of when I've met with them in person or virtually, and then in addition, I put the meetings I held with my mentor and where those meetings took place so you could just get a feel for the year. I've also included a few sample agendas from those meetings that occur, and in addition to those are included in that goal. The second goal was around enhancing instructional practices using the universal design for learning. I provided some evidence in this area. This is the student learning goal. It has to be connected to how are kids benefiting from a goal that I have. Ultimately, I provided some examples from our pre-treat I referenced earlier, the administrative retreat, the opening day remarks, the A-team, which is the administrative team, which includes all principals, assistant principals, and central office staff. We have a running agenda in there that you can see some of the topics that we've covered in this particular area. professional development, and our district improvement plan would be other areas where we've prioritized some of this work. And it started, once again, we talked about Panorama starting with our leaders. We started UDL with our leaders. We also had opening day. We were fortunate to have, for the second year in a row, Mirko Chardon come to talk a little bit about UDL and a focus on how we could be continuing to enhance that within our district. Katie Novak, who is the author of many of the UDL books, it's a universal design for learning. How do you design instruction where you've anticipated student need, remove barriers so that all students can access that instruction in a way that allows them to be successful. She presented to our administrative team, and I think we would look to try to continue to partner with her as well as we move forward. She also presented not only on the opening day for our retreat, but she also did another PD with us later in the year. So really it's about trying to understand those principles and ultimately try to continue to work with our leadership team, but our teachers and our teacher leaders to try to continue this work. This is a multi-phased approach, but I've provided you with some documents and evidence that show the work that was done from either my level or from the district level. Each school has taken this, and I could have included 10 slide presentations that each school has done in this particular area specific to their school to try to help move this along. Once again, it's a team effort. The third is budget and fiscal management. In this area, you'll see I provided you with some information. I think you all had a front row seat to a lot of the budget conversations and presentations, but certainly didn't want to make any assumptions. So the budget book is linked in there. I also provided just a few of the presentations that are in there, but there's a link to the website which has everything we've done, tried to house as much as possible there. It's been a unique budget year for us where we were tasked with basically building 4 models and then through school committee feedback and through conversation get to 1. And ultimately you've seen how that's played out through the joint budget subcommittees, the co-presentations with the town administrator, and the joint school committee and town council budget presentation that the hearing that we did at the high school. There's been a variety of ways in which we've tried to engage in this process to ultimately land where we are today. We have an approved budget. It's less than level service with a question on the ballot for June 11th regarding whether or not additional funding would be provided to the school. At this point, we've concluded that part of the process. The remaining factor is the June 11th, where more information would come to determine how we settle our budget for the remainder of the year. But short of that, I think at this point, we've gone through the budget process up to that point. And I tried to provide some examples. I'm happy to provide others if it's helpful, but I just picked out a few that I thought would be most relevant. Next is comprehensive school facilities analysis and visioning. I included some of the outcomes, so basically I think you all had a front row seat to that work as well, but ultimately wanted to provide you with evidence of the request for proposals in that process, the forums, the plan itself and the report, and then our district improvement plan and presentation, FAQs, and the presentation for the framework in which we are continuing to develop as far as a plan for implementation as we move forward. In that, I know that the plan itself led to multi-year recommendations that are not included. The most immediate one is working to identify our leaders, work to identify where students will go, and then ultimately start to build out community input and create systems where once we know where students will be attending to start to build out those communities as we move forward. The other piece that we are also engaging with our FEA around is around teacher submission of interest based on seniority, on what grade level they want to teach, where they would like to teach, and which do they value more, right? So we're working through those particular details now to make sure that we have a really clear picture. We anticipate that we would start to gather that information before the school year ends, but ultimately would need time and maybe need to do it again in the fall to make sure that we have all the information to make those types of determinations. But we're working closely with Donna, who is behind us back here, to work through that process to make sure that we are all on the same page as we roll that out. as we move forward here, so standards and indicators. Goal 2 covered the two, 1A and 1B, which were identified, had to do with instruction. And I think the evidence up top, I didn't want to flood this thing with just link after link. So to create a bit of a sequence, you'll see if I put goal 2, it means that it also would have met this goal area if it wasn't already one of the top 4 goals that you had approved or identified for me. Same thing, management operations. Some of that's fiscal management, but I didn't want to just say, look at the budget goal. We also do a lot of other things regarding fiscal management within the school. One would be around policy development, school safety, our handbook process, which this summer, at the end of the summer, this school committee will approve the next iteration of handbooks. So those will come before you as part of the process to initiate that. And we also included a lot of the agendas that we've had for a variety of different types of meetings. One thing that's not in here, but is a huge part of our job, is really around looking at accountability and making sure that we're not only modeling accountable behavior, but also behind the scenes working with our leaders and our employees around what is expected as an employee. And a lot of that happens discreetly behind the scenes, but it's around trying to grow our employees, sometimes needing to hold them accountable, all those things. They don't make it into an evidence log, but they do take up time, and we do that in a respectful, dignified way. But just wanted to point that out as we kind of move through. That's part of the work behind the scenes. Community engagement, you'll see listed here a variety of different communications. Some of them are invitations to engage with us. Others are straight communications. I put the snow cancellation, those types of communications that go out to the entire community. You'll see some of the community collaboration ones, or the Safe Coalition Food Pantry. And I think we have also looked for ways in which we engage our families and community involvement. Happens a lot at the school level, but looking to try to figure out ways. And one thing we did 2 weeks ago was put out a survey when we announced some of the information around the master planning, and the recommendations was to engage, and we shared a form with the community to share where they may have interests, to see where people maybe would like to have more engagement. So I think that's an area we'll continue to try to explore, but I wanted to just point out a few of those for you. Finally, in the Standard 4 professional culture, you'll see here hiring of the multilingual interventionist was a decision we made based on our context and where we were as a district, with a lot of transition early in the year, with welcoming newcomer students, and ultimately trying to provide as much professional development opportunity for teachers and educators and leaders around how to best support students in our system. And provided some written samples of updates and different communications available to you. And then for continuous learning, you'll see the professional development day plan and some other documents that help illustrate some of those pieces. So I'll stop there. I tried to provide an overview. As you dig into the links, you'll certainly see more information, but ultimately wanted to just orient you to the report itself and what's included. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. Okay. Before I open to questions, I'm just going to flip it over to Vice Chair McNeil.
Yes. First of all, thank you very much, Lucas, for putting this together for us and for this presentation tonight. So just for the members, just a little bit about our process going forward in regards to the superintendent evaluation. So the form will be sent out to the members this evening. It'll be a Google form with all the different goals and the different standards and indicators that are listed here. There'll be places for you to both put your rating as well as to write out a more free-form recommendation, or any recommendations or commendations that you think would be appropriate to include. So now we're not going to go through all this evidence tonight, because that would that'd be something. But so we're tasked right now to go through the evidence when it comes to different goals and respective indicators. Please take your time and make your best judgment based on what you see, what you see laid out here and what we've seen with the results. And if you have any particular questions, please feel free to reach out to Lucas if you have something that you'd like more clarity on or something to be further extrapolated upon. The sheets, so the Google Forms will be due by June 10th, so it's a little under 2 weeks from now. And the Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee is scheduled to meet on June 12th. And so at that point, subcommittee will meet in open forum to discuss the feedback, kind of compile it, and then after that, based on our discussion, I'll type it up into a draft, which will then be, I'll go over with the superintendent, and then the draft will be presented at the school committee meeting on June 18th to be voted on and to put forward to the community as the official superintendent evaluation. And yeah, if you have any other questions, please, we'll ask now, but again, specific questions regarding the evidence, take a look, review, and probably best to email Lucas if you have anything specific that you'd like expansion upon.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's a great teamwork, Chris, as usual. And definitely take at least 10 business days to go through this.
I provided a few, 4 or 5 in each, but I recognize 2. I didn't know it felt like if I added too much, it would just be too little. I just felt like if you had options to scan, it might be helpful, but I'm happy to provide additional information if that's helpful to you in any way.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job this year. I'm going to give you good reviews. I don't have much to say. Hopefully I'll try to give you some constructive feedback, but I feel like you and your team have moved mountains for us, so yeah, excited to do this. Glad to give you some accolades.
Again, thank you for this presentation. We look forward to completing the process for the next couple of weeks.
Yep, so as my colleague said, thank you for compiling this data. I can't speak today.
I can't
one thing I did notice that there were some links that we didn't have access to, so.
I will go through each of those to make sure.
Thank you. But yeah, I'll
Absolutely.
definitely look through this and provide that feedback.
Sure.
I won't send that email
I noticed one said, do you want to share this? But I'm presenting, so I didn't want to.
It's perfect, yeah, because I figured it's live, you can just link those in. Other than
Right.
that, appreciate the effort in putting that all together and kind of getting things in a manageable format, so thank
Okay.
you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to the feedback. I really do. I appreciate this team and the work that they've done, but certainly as I said, I represent a lot of people who are involved in this, and I want to continue to grow, so I'll look for those opportunities as well, okay?
All right. Terrific. Thank you
Thank you.
very much. All right, so we got moving on to discussion action items. So A, already been taken care of. So we'll head over to B, elementary report cards.
All right, we kick it over to Dr. Rogers.
Okay, so you have a little bit of a packet here before you. So this is a almost 2-year process in the making that's culminated here. I know Eric Stark and Tim Frazier are online in Zoom. They've led a lot of this work, so they're here to answer questions should you have them. But we worked together as a team to compile this for you. So ultimately, the report card at the elementary level has not been revised in 10 years. And so there have been standard revisions. You know that we've had curriculum implementations. And so just with that, the other piece that I should have said in the district improvement plan presentation is that we're also looking to align elementary school report card revisions to the curriculum revision cycle as well. So, and I can kind of speak to that a little bit throughout this process. So last spring, the other thing I should note is the Portrait of a Graduate came out after the report card was implemented. And so with all those things, we just thought it was really timely to start this process. So last spring, we brought an elementary math committee together that consisted of elementary math specialists, gen ed teachers, and special ed teachers. And we didn't really have enough representation on that committee that we wanted. So what we did is throughout that spring is folks came together, and then they were tasked with going back to every grade level across in every school. So every common professional time that the math folks had with teachers, they brought back the proposed revisions to get feedback from teachers, and then brought that back to the committee. So that was kind of a back and forth last year. And then as we moved into winter of '24 this year, we continue to revise and refine based on feedback the math portion of the report card, which you'll see in a moment. And then we also moved into the student responsibility section, and this is where we really thought we had an opportunity to align with Portrait of a Graduate. And we know that Portrait of a Graduate is almost a 2-page document, so you certainly can't fit everything on a report card, but the committee, I went to, I think, the second to last or last committee meeting that they had, and they really unpacked the language in those POG skills and really thought about developmentally where students are at in the elementary level, and tried to prioritize kind of the skills to articulate in a report card and communicate with families. So that work happened. That work also went back to every single elementary school teacher for feedback. A survey was sent out for feedback to teachers to provide some input. Along with that, we also looked at the unified arts, so the health, wellness, art, and music, and now we have instructional technology, which was not on the report card this year, but we're looking to add for next year. And so every single one of those teachers used department meeting time to collaborate, to come. So what you see before you is not the creation of Eric, Tim, or myself, but really the creation of a collaboration over, close to a year and a half worth of work. What you don't see in front of you tonight for revision is anything connected to literacy at the elementary level. Again, as we think about curriculum implementation, we're now in our 3rd year of math implementation, which has given us time to implement, monitor, and reflect, and now feel comfortable and confident in the adjustments that we're putting forth in math. So we're looking to continue that work next year with literacy, and then as we work to refine and adjust science and social studies curriculum, we'd be looking to do that work as well in the coming year. So this is more of an iterative process than it is kind of a whole-scale redo of a report card. So that's kind of the overview there. And then what I would say is the lens we tried to approach this whole process with was, what's the purpose of a report card? The purpose of a report card is as a communication tool to families. It's not, as we all know, like alphabet soup for an educator. It's not EduSpeak. So really, we took that lens as we went through to say, does this make sense to a family reading this report card? We also took a critical view at, one example I think is in grade 1. In every grade, you have domains that articulate like the overarching goals of a content. So particularly, like, we're going to take math for example. You might have measurement and data. Well, measurement and data is not articulated by the state as a critical standard, but operations and algebraic thinking is. So as we went through the report card, we found that there were some places where there was a lot of language around skills, content skills, that weren't necessarily prioritized within that grade level. So we really tried to take a look at, if geometry isn't a critical focus for grade 2, say, why should that have more language on a report card and more communication to a family than, say, operations and algebraic thinking, and where students are developing their number sense. So we tried to kind of weigh all those things when we brought this before you tonight. So you have multiple pages here. So you'll see every grade level will have 2 pages. So your kindergarten, just to orient you to that, is the old language is in black and the new language is in red. So you can see the Portrait of a Graduate skills. We have confident, self-aware individual, empathetic, productive citizen, curious and creative thinker, effective communicator, and reflective, innovative problem solver, with a few skills articulated underneath those. And those will carry through all K through 5, that language. As you move to, say, the next page, I won't walk you through every page, but the next page will show you the math standards as it relates to kindergarten. The old language is on the left-hand side, and the new language is in red on the right-hand side. Really, again, trying to hone in on vertical alignment as students progress through, so that we're communicating consistently throughout the years to families, but also that we're not over-communicating in some areas and under-communicating in others. And then what I would draw your attention to is towards the end of this packet are your art, health, music, PE, and instructional technology, and where they're really focusing in on, they teach, all educators have different roles, and these specific educators sometimes are teaching upwards of, 500 students. And so really thinking about what is a reasonable way to report to families how students are progressing through, and knowing that those teachers also have students, which I think is such a pleasure to see them moving all the way through school. So you might have the same PE teacher from kindergarten to first, second, to third. So the communication is vertical as well as, that might not be the same for elementary first grade teacher per se. So I'll just stop there and answer kind of any questions you might have.
All right.
Yeah, so a couple of things. I think that I'm wondering whether there is an opportunity, and I know that these are all, digital report cards, but to link off for families who might not be as familiar with the Portrait of Graduates, they have a better understanding of how exactly, when I'm on the last page now, so, but regardless of section, when you get to art and you're being ranked on Portrait of Graduate skills, that parent can easily, say, well, what are those again? Remind me to click in. The other thing that I'm wondering is kind of outside of, and I'm sorry, sorry if I'm getting off track, but outside of the specific wording of the existing report card to the changes, but how, as a new report card is brought into play, teachers and staff are educated to how they should be ranking students, so that communication from what you were saying before, as a communication tool to parents and to families, that they understand, is my teacher coming into the school year going to rank so that going into the second half they can show growth in a report card, or are they ranking to what they're meeting from the beginning?
That's such a great point.
Is
and
there-
that was, yes, it was discussed throughout the entirety of this revision process.
Yeah.
And so internally, because much of the work that or adjustments before you around math content particularly, but I hear you on the POG skills as well, and it's needed there, was around internal documents. So how do we align our, or provide guidance and then align our process and our expectations, so that if I have a teacher in one school that's second grade or another school, that there's consistency there. And so, so we are developing with the content specialists at the elementary level, those internal documents.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, because I think that, coming into, and I switched off the thing now and I'm going to lose it. If you're ranked lower in Portrait of Graduate Skills or whatever it is, achieves art objectives in the early part of the year, and how that grows, like what is the difference there, and how did my student, what were they lacking in the early half that they're growing to, or vice
Absolutely.
versa?
And I think to add to that, which I think you're getting at as well, is communication tool for families. And so we're going to make sure that we do that as well.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So I really appreciate the changes made to the math section, and kind of how things are very well spelled out and very specific. And actually your commentary on the communication tool for families, I think really, it hits home. It helps a lot to know exactly what my students are being, ranked on. And of course, that being said, looking at the final page, I know, again, all the effort is in all the other pages. This is 15 pages long, and I'm picking a fight on page 15. If you were to tell me that my child did well in art objectives or health objectives, my very first question would be, what are those? and trying to come back. And I think, yes, it's great to be able to engage, but if every single step along the way, I need to understand exactly where something might not be going right with my student, where it's like, great, what happened in health, if I don't have any tools to really be able to engage and understand what the objectives may have been, it puts me at a bit of a disadvantage where then if I'm reaching out to a teacher, if they can be very specific, but kind of looking at the consistency there, that's my main kind of concern
Yep.
here is like, yes, we've gone into all this detail, especially around math, and I've seen, some of the other sections historically
Yep.
that we have. But then to really kind of pare it down here, where it's just, it's a generic objective. That doesn't tell me what my student's doing. That just says, it's almost like saying we had to put something else in. We have graduate, portrait of graduate skills, and we couldn't just say that. So I just think that is one part that I think we could expand on this a bit and actually have those objectives, whether it's something customary where, great, for each grade, art might have different
Yep.
meanings. But if you have them as a mandatory input for the teacher, as at least kind of a talking point for parents if they want to engage, if there is any kind of challenge along the way, just so that they have a something to kind of go off of.
Okay, so I appreciate that, and I can take that back to the group of folks that worked on this. I would say what the goal was to try to prioritize the POG skills as those folks, again, see the students as they move through K through 5. So that was one of the focus. And the other aspect of that was if the writing on the left-hand side there, so I'll just use art as an example, demonstrates mastery of art concepts is the first skill that was in the prior report card. Demonstrates mastery and use of materials, and demonstrates creative thinking and self-expression. So they looked at that and they thought, well, that demonstration of self-expression is intertwined in some of the POG skill language that is on the prior page there. And then as it relates to the concepts and skills, combine those into saying, like, these are art objectives. But I see your point in saying, how can we expand that even if it's grade level specific is what I hear you saying.
Yeah,
right?
and I definitely get what your point is, where we're kind of honing things down, like
Yeah.
we're bringing it all together,
Yeah.
so it is a consistent theme throughout.
Yeah.
I just think, especially if we're going to talk about points of conversation and making sure the parents have kind of a clear view as to how things are going. I know that these, there's a lot going on, and these teachers have a lot of different groups that they deal with at
Yeah.
once. But that's just one point, is that there is something where we've gone too far and we've just said, has my student succeeded? No, maybe, yes. I don't have anything to go on for that. Like, I can't even like start the conversation. How do I ask a child, all right, what do you do right?
Right,
It
so
just
maybe a
makes it
bit of an
hard.
expansion in each of those academic areas.
Yeah, at least a little bit, so there's
Yep.
some kind of touch point.
Yep, we can do that.
So I love the integration of the portrait of the graduate. I think that ingrains that right from the get-go, and people are just now understanding that and following that philosophy. So thank you for doing that. One thing that as a parent I always had questions on was, okay, you get these scores for your child, but it doesn't necessarily mean that concept was covered as of yet. So like, how do we care for where they should be versus where they are at? So for example, like the math stuff, it covers the full entire year, but that concept may not be covered at the end of the term. So are we expected them to be given ones throughout until it gets covered?
That's a great question. Kind of aligns to what Erin had asked earlier. So we are working to develop both those internal documents that, in what term are we assessing, adding and subtracting within 10? If we're not doing it in the first term, then how do we denote that in the report card? And if we're doing it in the second term, how are we doing it there if by the end of the year we're looking for mastery, but maybe not mastery in the second term? Because some of those skills you're going to see develop throughout the course of the year, whereas telling time, per se, might not be developed all the way through the course of the year. So we are developing those communication tools for both teachers, but also for families, so that there's an understanding of, if it's grayed out, we're working with tech too, because they're going to, I'll go back to the art, health, PE departments, and once we have approval for this, the tech department's going to work on the backside tech end, so we need to figure out, is it that we're graying things out when they're not assessed at all, so we don't want to have to put an A, right? So we're going to work out those, you know, technical pieces, but we'll have a communication tool for families to articulate that.
Okay, great. And if, it'd be great if you also can identify when those areas are lagging. So they should be at a 3 at this point, but your students at a 1. You know, like how do you easily identify that?
Good point. Yep.
And then the other thing I noticed, and it could be a typo, but you let me know. On the last page, so the second line, it says achieves art objectives for each of them.
Oh yeah, look at that. Look at that. We're going to go back on those anyway, so.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you and your team for the work you put in on this. I agree with, you know, the comments my colleagues have made in terms of, you know, appreciation for the portrait of the graduate, points and objectives being included in there, and, you know, I also echo the earlier points made about the communication and seeing how we can expand upon any clarity that could be provided. And I don't think I have any other questions at this time.
No, I think it's good. I think it actually gives parents more to discuss at home because it's more general. It might open up to some, I'm not the type of parent that like hones in on details. It might, because it's kind of vague, create more of a dialogue between the parent and the teacher wanting to know, to Paul's point, like more about, like specifically what is it about. I like it. I think it's good. I think it's, well, gives opportunity for dialogue.
It's a great idea. Thing is, obviously, it will create more dialogue between parents and kids. And there will be two, I think, two tuition centers in Franklin for students. One is Kumon, the other one is Russian. They are going to get very busy after this. That's what I'm saying, looking at it. Everything. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank you, the entire team, everybody who had their fingerprints on this. A lot of great work and hard work went into this. I have 2 comments. One, really appreciate just the inclusion of IT in terms of like a grading rubric, however that shakes down. I think especially right now, I feel like with this, you know, every little kid right now is fluent in an iPad. But to really kind of, you know, say, well, there's a difference between being able to kind of, you know, use your parents' phones or to use the iPad, but to actually understand, you know, the tech that's out there, how to use it responsibly. Just that we're both teaching it is fantastic, but also kind of providing that metric is terrific. And again, I love the alignment with Portrait of a Graduate, especially too when I'm looking at this. One of the things that I remember coming out of like one of the locker workshops was, you know, who's the holder of the Portrait of a Graduate, and you know, one of the aspects is the parents, the guardians, and the families. And I think the way that these report cards are lined up to say, you know, here's a Portrait of a Graduate that all of, you know, Franklin has kind of agreed to, that we're going as being the North Star for our education. You know, here's how each of our kiddos are kind of ranking up and aligning to that, so that way the parents, the guardians, the families, everybody can keep being a part of the Portrait of a Graduate, and using that to kind of open up more dialogue and discussion and touch points with their kids. So it's fantastic, and I really appreciate all the work that went into this. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I owe all the credit to Tim Frazier and Eric Stark, so I just want to say that. They're here if you have any questions for them.
Great job, guys, too. Yeah, please.
Just to clarify, so if we're voting on this now and there's things that are going back just kind of a second round, would it be more appropriate to table this for the next meeting so that we can just see some of those potential reviews versus doing it tonight?
So we could do that, or we could just restrict the last page there and move forward so that we can start our work with the tech department behind the scenes on the other aspects of the report card. You can go either way.
We can do it either. We can do that either way. Or approved contingent upon X, Y, and Z could also be a way. But or parts of it.
And so, yeah, so if we were to kind of approve it contingent upon, like an expansion of, like, page 15, right, that last one, and then that would then just kind of come back to us, but allow the flexibility for you guys to kind of move forward.
Yeah, so I have a meeting with the folks that run these departments on Thursday. So I can go before them on Thursday and then bring revisions, hopefully back,
So, okay.
barring
Good.
time.
So my only concern with the contingent part is then if we're like listing out things that have to be done first, like if there's any challenges. So if we just table that final page, say everything else, like incorporating Al's suggestions, Aaron's, like the other suggestions, and just have that go,
Mhm.
and then that final page is just what we're editing.
Right.
Can we break that up?
We can.
We can try anything
We
at
can.
least once.
Yeah.
Until somebody calls us on.
We can. We could come back with the final page at the next meeting.
Okay. So
Is
should I
that,
make
is that what I'm hearing?
So,
motion separate?
what we'll do is, once we have this presented, we'll get the superintendent to make his recommendation. We'll have, I'll entertain a motion, a second, and then at that point, then we can kind of make an amendment unless he just wants to change up his language right now.
So I recommend approval of the proposed changes to the elementary report card as discussed.
Okay, so then just to kind of get to the amendments, is there a motion?
Move to approve the proposed changes to the elementary report cards as discussed.
Is there a second?
Second.
That was close. All right, so now we'll do questions, kind of additional comments, or amendments.
I move to amend that we adjust the final page of this document, which is page 15, separately to be revisited at the next meeting for approval.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. First, we'll just have a discussion on that amendment, which again is just to kind of say, take page 15 out and just focus on everything else. Is there any questions, comments, discussions about that particular amendment? Seeing none, the vote on the amendment will come. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, perfect. So now, kind of questions, comments for what we have, which is really just everything excluding the final page. Okay, all right. Then seeing none, again, the motion is to the approval of the proposed changes to the elementary report card as discussed, excluding the final page, page 15, for that to come back around at a next meeting. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Motion passes.
Just making a note.
You got it.
All right, I have it. Okay, so we'll bring that next meeting.
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
All right, next up, policy. Kick that to Dr. Rogers. You're on.
Okay.
You're on tonight.
There we go. Okay, so the policy up for first read before you is the meal charge policy, EFD, as well as EFDR, which are the procedures associated with the policy. So this policy was brought forth primarily as the state moved to universal free lunch. And so the impetus there was around how do we refund folks money? We didn't have the language for that in the policy, so that was really the driving force. So you can see, I'll just walk through some of the adjustments at a high level, and then we'll pause. The first page there, you can see some language was struck, just some simple language change there. Moving into the second page, the third paragraph there just articulated a bit more about our computerized system and what that entails for families getting some reminders and things like that. Then here you see refunds. This is where language really started to adjust due to universal free meals. And so we struck some of the language there that you'll see that graduating seniors will not be refunded, things of that nature. And you'll, in those following paragraphs, we added some language around if students have funds, that these balances can be transferred to other students, friends, or neighbors, that transfers can be made between family members through their account. They can call for assistance in doing this, because you can do that through the online portal, but that there's a mechanism for support, so should you need it. The next line there is new, where it says any amount at or above $25 remaining as a credit balance will be refunded upon request, and such request can be made one time per calendar year, as to not continually ask for requests, but one time per year. And then it goes on to delineate, after 1 year of inactivity, so you have a graduating senior, you have $26, 1 year of activity goes by, that those funds will be automatically transferred to become property of the Franklin Public School lunch programs, and will be used as a donation for the school lunch program to offset uncollected debt. So that language is added there. And then I think as you continue through, you'll see some adjustment to key terms, just innately, and kind of universal free meals. That language has been adjusted, so a lot omitted, some added. And then the last page, the second to last and last page, just really articulate the same, those 3 paragraphs that I just kind of talked through. It's the same exact language here. You will note on the last page that the last sentence that says any amount at or above 25, that one will actually come out because it's redundant there, and that table beneath that's on your page will be removed. That was there as a talking point during policy subcommittee, so that won't be put forth. That's just a typo edit. I think that's anything else to add?
Any kind of questions, comments?
So I do have a question about the table at the bottom. So that's the breakout of balances as of when this was created, correct?
Correct.
Okay. For the people that are above $25, are they being actively communicated that they can get the refund, or like, I guess what's happening for those folks?
We'll post it on the website, particularly on the school lunch website, to make sure that people are aware. You could include it in your newsletter. We can find multiple avenues to do that, and they'll have a year to do so we can repeatedly send that out to people.
Okay. And would it be a year
from when you change the policy?
Okay, thank you.
And just to kind of add some context on that too, because this is something that's come up for a couple of years during at least my time on policy. And I know there are a number of families that do kind of closely watch this. And I would imagine that news would also kind of spread pretty quickly, as they have kind of requested these refunds that just per our policy weren't available. That even as soon as it came up during a policy subcommittee agenda, that we, at least on the subcommittee, kind of got an email as well. So I do think that news will start to spread. But it's going to be great to make sure that everybody is aware of that. All right. Lucas, do you want to do the reading?
So I recommend moving the following policies to a second read as discussed. EFD, meal charge policy, EFD-R, meal charge policy and procedures.
Is there a motion as discussed?
Motion to bring policies EFD and EFD-R to second reading as discussed.
Second?
Second.
That was close. I think he's going to give it to Christina. All right. Any questions, discussions? All right. Seeing none, vote will come on a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Motion carries.
Okay. Next before you in your packet was the override pledge MOU. The town council has approved this override pledge at this time. You would wish to hold the vote until further issues either were resolved or actions took place. It's back before you tonight, and I'll let you initiate the conversation by first I'll read the recommendation to approve the override pledge MOU as discussed.
All right. Well, with that, just to open up questions or deliberation, is there a motion?
Motion to approve the override pledge MOU as discussed.
Is there a second?
Oh, second.
All right. Yeah, so this was approved to town council, I believe FinCom as well. And this will be our last regularly scheduled meeting before the override. So it's in front of us today. I know one of the things, actually, I'll just kick it over to Dr. Dutch. I know one thing that was kind of talked about, that you have presented at a number of meetings, was just in terms of that 60-40 split.
Yes, I can speak to it. Certainly, I think when you do an analysis of the 60-40 split, and you consider the benefit of that split versus no commitment beyond year one, and I know that the thought is 100% is the alternative. There is a third choice as well, which is no guarantee beyond year one. I did a further analysis for the budget subcommittee earlier this evening, because really the only thing that you're guaranteed is the $4 million each year, not the 2.5% on top of $4 million. So even at that $4 million a year, which represents 5% of our budget, as the budget goes up, obviously it's a little bit smaller than 5%. That's double the percent increase than we've ever seen on an annual basis from the town. That 5% is guaranteed. It allows you to know upfront what your budget will to be able to plan. It represents in totality over the full 5 years after that first year, $20 million over what our budget will be for FY25 by FY30. That's significantly more than we would expect to see otherwise, probably by $10 million. So I think from a business perspective and from a superintendent's perspective and a curriculum perspective, and the idea about teaching and learning, it's predictable. It provides value for you. The other piece is that 40% represents significant school expenses as well, just in on the facility side. And as was mentioned by someone earlier, it provides you an opportunity for additional revenue to come forward should there be need, because the entire pie is now larger. So that there's less, I don't want to use the word fighting, but there's less people trying to get a piece of that pie because the pie's larger. So I think from that perspective, it's beneficial. I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have about, specific questions about that 40-60 split and how that $4 million is guaranteed. If there's some misunderstanding about that as well.
Thank you.
I have questions. So I feel like I'm missing something because and I'm gonna vote for this MOU anyway because and it's important for the people listening at home or maybe on YouTube watching this back. It doesn't matter if we approve this or not. It'd be nice to approve it, but it's ultimately the town council holds the power. So it's good that they're going to kind of guarantee us this. But my question is, so the 6.8 is in the 81 million if we win the override.
6.3 is in the
Right, 6.3 is in that gets us to 81 million. So then next year, we're working off that 81 million, we're adding 4 million to that, but isn't the 6.8 already accounted for?
6.8 is now part of your tax base on an ongoing basis. So those funds are always part of that 6.8. So keep in mind that normally $147 million, whatever the town tax levy is, you're going to see 2.5% on top of that. That's usually what we see for us, is that 2.5%. You've now got $6.8 million more plus 2.5%. That $6.8 million is there in perpetuity. It's not 6.8 million more every year, but that 6.8 million is there
Built
each
into the-
year,
So
built
we're
in.
working off of the 80, so we're working off the 81, and we're looking at next year, let's just assume we're gonna get 2.5% more than the 81.
Which would be about 2 million.
But then we're not getting, like, I'm just trying to figure out why we're adding 4 million to that if we're not getting,
Because you're getting 60% of the 6.8 million override. You're getting 60% of that. That's the commitment from the town administrator on an annual basis.
so he's gonna cut 4 million from the municipal side of the
Nope.
budget? Because we don't get an additional 6.8 next year, like we did to get to the 81.
No, you
What-
don't,
what
but
am
it's
I not
already,
understanding?
it's already part of that budget. I'm not sure how, I don't know how to explain it in a simpler way than it's already in that baseline budget.
So the 40% is a number we're coming up with based on the 6.8, but it's not really based on the 6.8, it's just kind of,
May I take a
does
moment?
anyone, yeah, can someone explain it
So I
differently to
think,
me, because I'm not.
so I think I understand exactly what you're asking. So the modeling that has been presented shows that there's an additional $4 million provided to the schools each year. I think what Ruth Ann is hinting at is the fact that the 6.8 million is a one-time increase. That then obviously we see the 2.5% above and beyond that each year. The way the model reads is that there is an additional 6.8 million each year, and we're getting 4 million additional each year versus 6.8 million setting a new flat level and then reverting back to the 2.5% increases off that 6 million, or 60% of that 6 million. I think that's where that disconnect is. And just kind of looking at the numbers now that she's pointed that out, you know, we've had this modeled out as 4 million each year as an increase. So normally we do get 2 million, 3 million, give or take, but this is modeled out as 4 million each year as part of that increase, when it doesn't necessarily read that way with what's just been described, where we're not getting an additional 6.8 on top
No.
of what we already have. So if this year we go up to the 81.3 million, next year there's not an additional 6.8 million to be divvied up with us getting 4 million more.
No, but we're getting 4 million more.
On top of the 6.8 million that we've already accounted for this
Correct.
year.
Correct.
That's where I think the loss is where are we finding that additional $4 million when we're not taking in additional 6.8 million next year, like after this happens. That growth aspect is where I think we're getting lost.
I don't know the answer to that
Okay.
specifically. I would need to look at the total tax levy and do the 2.5% on that, plus the additional 2.5% on that 6.8 million to see what that total increase is on an annual basis.
Okay.
Um,
But I think that's the question. So like if we're down at now we're getting 60% of the 2.5 increase on that differential, now it's a very different number than an additional $4 million each year.
But if you look at the pledge, they're committing to $4 million
Each year.
on an annual basis. So in all reality, I'm not as concerned where it's coming from. There's a commitment that we're getting 4 million each year, claiming it's 64, based on the 60-40 split.
And that's not based on the 75 million, it's based on the
No, it's
81
based on the
million.
81 million.
I guess it's like, I think the most important thing that we all have to kind of pay attention to is when our town administrator does his 5-year forecast with each department sort of spelled out for us, which I think he usually does it in June-ish, like joint budget time. I don't know. I think it was June in last year, but that's kind of what I think that people who are concerned about the future of the school budget and how ultimately the school committee's powerless to allocate money, like, you know, hence why I'll sign this like all day long. I'm I'm grateful to even be at this point of voting for an override. I just think, I wanna see the town's 5-year projection, because I think that's gonna be telling, coming from the town administrator directly, about, you know.
So I'm gonna refer you back to item 6 in the pledge. 6A, which says no less than 60%, 4.08 million of the full operational override amount shall be allocated to the school department. So each year, he's committed to $4.08 million additional allocation to the schools. So that can be added to our budget from the previous year.
Okay.
That's not what that says.
But is,
It doesn't say additional. It just says flat.
That's assuming that
It's just flat.
they're gonna otherwise maintain this $81 million next year.
Yeah.
There's no commitment that they're gonna fully fund to 81 plus 4 million.
That's not.
Right,
what-
which
Yeah,
would actually get us
the way
behind.
the way the wording
Right.
has nothing to do. There's no step up. There's no increase over time. The way it reads is that no less than 60% of the operational override will be allocated to the school department. And the way that reads to me is that the risk really comes down to, instead of being at 81 million, we have to worry about the
78.
risk of having to find that additional 2 million. And that runs into perpetuity. Now we're hoping for the 2.5 and additional support from the town. But there's no step up in this. This MOU has no step up. It just has a very flat level of funding, saying we got 6.8. We will always, so this year we get that 6.8, but starting next year, we're getting only 4 million out of that 6.8. It's not saying that our budget doesn't drop down for that. It's saying that hopefully the town would then step in and help more on that. But it's not 4 million additional each year, because that's not how the override would function.
So that's not my understanding. I understand what you're saying as to what it says. My understanding was it was 4.08 million on an annual basis. When I modeled it out with the town administrator and shared the same document that I've shared with you, he was in agreement with my budget projections for the school district for the next 6 years.
Yeah, I saw that at FinCom,
presented
and I
that.
was confused.
Yeah, I saw that as well, and I think that, he's referred to your, the values that you've put out. I think my main concern there is that if we get to year 2 and the answer is, oh, you misread that, this isn't a legally binding document, we're just out. So
Right,
that's where my concern is here,
I don't
because
like how the 11th hour with the June 11th vote coming up, because I think that this is the best we've ever done. Like, the fact that we're here is like, I don't wanna screw this up,
Yeah,
but.
it is a pledge, not a legally
Right.
binding.
Right.
Yeah, so, I just think we have to be cautious and like make sure we stay plugged in to like,
well, and I don't want to nix a whole lot. I think there's a lot of discussion to be had here. I think there's a lot of discussion that came up in the first place. I think that this is one of those things we're looking to vote on it now because the timing might be a bit of a challenge, and there's clearly some outstanding questions that we have for clarification. I know I have various comments, and I think Ruth Ann has also made some here where, this isn't on us. We can't control the purse here. We have no control over where the funding is going to go, where financing is going to go. We appreciate the vote of confidence from town council. We appreciate the fact that they put the override on the budget. But this really doesn't sit with us, aside from saying that, yes, we understand a non-legally binding document that we have no purview over is being presented to us at this point in time. So I think this is one of those moments where it might be better to revisit this again later, when we've actually had time to look at it. Like, with answers, not like, I understand the timing here, but having some of these answers pretty clear before we're putting our names to it, I think, I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, it's unsettling to be back at square one. And last time we brought this up, we had a whole lot of questions. We had a whole lot of issues with what exactly was being said here, the wording. There was suggestion, I believe, from some that there should be a very open discussion on this topic and having something that we actually put out. And the same document just showed back up on our agenda.
No, and I'll certainly.
I know I totally went out of terms.
No. Speak to that, I think, especially like when it comes to the 60-40, you know, it will be something that we'll see, you know, like it, regardless, well, depending on if the override itself passes, as that's completely contingent upon everything right now with this document. That, yeah, at the end of the day, it's going to be the town council that's going to kind of be looking at it and kind of determining where the budget lies, and the town administrator, as they do, you know, every single year, and the school committee to continue to advocate for the schools, the kiddos and our families to the best ability possible. I do look at this and hope, you know, see it as, you know, no less than as a floor, not necessarily the ceiling. And it definitely shows to kind of be the best shot that we've had in a decade and a half of having the possibility of a stabilized budget, a fully funded budget that the superintendent has put out that isn't just the budget that is necessarily one that might be able to be acceptable and kind of palatable, but one that actually kind of addresses the needs of our students, and where we're in you know, very close proximity of that in less than 2 weeks of actually kind of achieving that. I completely understand, and I get what's all been said.
Yeah, I don't think this would disrupt, sorry.
No.
I don't think this is gonna disrupt the process. Like, that's my personal feeling, is because I feel like there's nothing, if anything, we've been sort of told, you should be happy with 60%. So like, if we're not at least accepting that, then, you know, and I just, it doesn't, like, so to act like we're gonna get 4 million on top of 81, I just doubt that that's realistic. I'd like to think that that's a promise that, like, I don't, I wanna see the town admin's 5-year forecast too, like how it relates to the rest of the town. It just seems, it just doesn't feel like anything impactful, this document. It just, like they, you know, the town council was afraid that we wouldn't be, you know, brave enough to make the tough decision of closing the elementary schools and consolidating and saving the town that much money. We did that. You know, we stepped up. I feel like we stepped up. We wanted more of an override. We sort of settled for less. I don't know. Yeah, sorry.
I think there's some other commitments in the pledge from the school committee that town council is looking for as well, and from the school district, specifically related to living within the agreed amount on an annual basis, not coming back for another override within 5 years. So things along those lines. I guess the other thing that I would say is, if when the projection was presented to town council at the finance committee meeting, actually it was the finance committee meeting, if town administrators did not agree with those numbers, I think he would have indicated so. He would not have agreed to those numbers as a projection if they weren't realistic from his perspective. He did indicate that he didn't there was nothing guaranteeing the 2.5% on top of the 60% increase of the override amount. So,
right, because what's 2.5% of 81 million? It's like,
it's 100.
160.
It's 180. The 2.5% is $182,000.
So who's guaranteeing us 4 million?
The first year. The first year. You know, remember, it's then 2.5% every year, and that 2.5%, to be totally transparent, is $1.2 million over the five years.
Right.
So it is a significant amount, but, you know, to argue over that versus 20 million.
Presented at FinCom, I'm all on board with. Like, if that's how it projects out, 4 million each year, and we're
So
staying at the 81, then that feels completely acceptable to me. But yeah,
I understand what Mr. Griffith is saying as he's reading that. That wasn't my take on
Right.
how it was
Wasn't
worded.
mine either.
Yeah, it's like.
Because it's from FY '26 and beyond, no
Ending-
less than 4.08 million. So I see that as added to our budget on an annual basis.
Beginning in FY '26 and ending in FY '30. The override amount will be applied to the general fund with the following stipulations. No less than 60%, 4.08 million of the full operational override amount shall be allocated to the school department.
So the full override amount.
So
got
beginning in
up to
FY
81
'26 and ending in FY '30,
million. Right.
the override amount will be applied to the general fund with no less than 60% going to schools for that time period. And in part of the pledges to not go back and ask for another override during that timeframe. And then Dr. Dutch's model that he presented to FinCom when the town administrator was there and presented to budget subcommittee tonight, models out that 6.3 in FY '25 and then goes to 4 million over the next, through FY '30, which brings us from 81.3 to 101 basically by FY
But to
'30.
free
As a
up that
total.
4 million, we'd have to take it out of the 81. I'd rather sign this after the 5-year forecast by the town admin, because I just think, who knows, that night of FinCom might have been just kind of tired, like, yeah, it's good. Dr. Dutch knows what he's doing. I don't know,
The other piece I would say is the 40%. I know I've received some emails from constituents or stakeholders. It's not absent of school-related items that are in there, and I think it references a few, the Horace Mann, Rem Jeff, a few of those projects. But I know that there are facilities costs that are school-related as part of that. So I just would point that out, and I think it's about the idea that Dr. Dutch brought up around the pie and making sure that the pie is bigger so we don't have as many competing interests as a community, which is where the override comes into play around trying to.
Yeah. And as we discussed tonight at the budget subcommittee meeting as well, like when it comes to the 60-40 splits and like the numbers that were presented at FinCom, it's also important to remember that those numbers were just the override amount in a vacuum, and not considering the fact that that number is on top of the increase that we'll be getting anyways.
But it's like if the 6.3 goes into the 81 million,
Yeah.
and then we're taking 4 million out of that next year, or 2 million out of that next year, because we're getting only 4. We're not working off the 81 million anymore, because that money isn't there anymore. We're taking 40% of it and giving it to the municipality. We're going backwards on our budget.
Well, but remember, we would have gotten money anyways without we're getting new money anyways without the override. We're still getting that, and the override's on top of what we'd be getting anyways. But also because of the override, the overall tax levy is larger, so that 2.5% is larger than would have been without the override.
But we only tend to get 2 million, right? So if we were to drop down by 2.
But again, the overall tax levy is still larger, so that.
So it's stable, but that I think comes to the point. It creates that stable increase in the overall amount, but it does not increase it that same amount each year, which is what the projection shows.
And
so let's just say this coming year, 6.8 million increase. Great, cool. That is a very clear number. We all understand it. Our budget goes up 6.3 just because of the couple of adjustments with facilities expenses. Next year, that is base case. That there is no additional 6 million the following year. That is just our new normal. We now get 4 million, which would drop us down based on the budget this year of 81 million. It would drop us down to 79 million. Now, granted, each year the town does tend to increase our budget by about 2 million, give or take.
Yep.
We can just round it because I'm not that.
Can you explain? Yeah, why are you dropping?
So we're only going down. We're only getting 60% of the overall override.
Where we got 100% this year.
But you're starting at 81 point.
But they're not saying we're getting additional.
But
They're
where
saying
does that
it's just
extra
a
money come
level
from,
cost. There is no additional money coming in beyond that. So our actual
That's our new
levy,
baseline.
our actual amount comes from a baseline that is already now inflated because of the override. It drops down by 40%, so we come down about $2 million. We now have $79 million. If we get the annual increase that the town has usually given us of about $2 million, we're basically back up to the same exact
We're kinda
level
level.
next year as we would be this year.
Right.
But
I mean,
then
I'd
going
love to say we're gonna
forward,
get 85 million,
we're going back to the potential increase of going up by 2 million if the town gives us that amount. What they're saying is they won't pull the rug back out. They won't take that whole 4 million back. They will just maintain that level of service from us at that exact projection. We're not getting the additional 6.8 each year.
Like,
So
we
I
used
think
up
there's
the
a
one-time influx, we used it up.
Yeah.
Aside from the 2.5 increase, we used it up the first time to get us to 81.
I think there's a lot, again, I think there's a lot of different points coming up here, and I think it's very clear that this would be great to kind of have really hashed out and have a few more talking points on it versus talking about it further now, where I think we can very quickly start going down many different rabbit holes.
And Jamie Helen might have an answer for this. I
He
just
might,
don't
and
know what
it would be
is.
great
I
if
just-
you were able to come and just kind of talk through some of that with us. And my son will tell you, math is not my strong suit. That's why I'm using round numbers, 2s, 4s, that's it. But I think if we have additional questions on it, it would be great for us to have those answers before we vote. So personally, I'd like to entertain a motion to table this discussion until such a time that we can, come back at a committee, properly noticed committee meeting after we've actually organized this, been able to provide the answers necessary, and be able to edit this document in a public forum as previously proposed, addressing the commitments relevant to the school committee's purview, and best understand what exactly is being committed to us by town council.
I would second that, because I think that we just need to see his 5-year projection. Maybe there's a way we're gonna stay at the 81 million, I don't know. I mean, there could be,
Sorry.
Yep, we were just trying to,
and I'm not disagreeing
Understand
with the 60/40 per se.
I wasn't understanding you explained it, but that's not been my understanding of, so that's why the decrease, I didn't see it that way as it was modeled, so unless, you have anything else to add, Dr. Dutch?
I don't at this point. I don't have another way to explain it, and I'm not clear on your understanding of it as well. I understand the commitment from the town administrator, whether we're going backwards or not, and I think, there's value in you wanting to understand what's it gonna look like as a part of a 5-year projection from the person who actually makes that decision.
Right, like where's that influx of 4
Understood.
million coming from next year? Without any cuts, I mean, to the municipal side, they're not, like, that's significant. I don't know.
I think part of the challenge is that, your next meeting is on the 18th of June, the override will be over, and at that point, it won't matter what you do with the pledge, because the override will have passed or not, and, there's then they've already signed the pledge, so they've committed to their piece of it, so.
So can I speak? So I've already voiced my concern about this before. Not much has changed, and I agree with everything that's been said so far in terms of the numbers are not aligning, and I'm still, I thought I was a pretty good math student, but it's not adding up for me as well. So I understand that the MOU is not binding, so I think delaying it, I don't think it's going to provide us any benefit. So I think we should still move forward. However, we need to have that public forum with the town council, the town administrator, as soon as we can. It doesn't have to be before the override vote, but I think it's something that we need to do and have on the books this summer. I think we all need to take time out for the children and the folks that are being impacted, and make the time for us as 3 bodies, the town council, school committee, and finance committee, to all meet and discuss this and discuss our future. Dr. Dutch, I know you had mentioned in your previous districts, there was a fixed amount for the schools, so this wasn't even a consideration at this point. You knew your base, you knew it was 2.5 above that, and it was predictable, and I think that's probably what we should be discussing to do going forward, so that we're not in the space of, okay, are we getting 2.5, are we getting less than that? It's something that we can project down the road, and at that point, it allows us to live within our means, because we know we have a set percentage of the budget going forward, and we can plan for it and do our own 5-year forecast.
Yeah, I mean, it did work, and it was more than, it wasn't just 2.5%, there were costs that were taken out of that before we got our allocation, but it did work. You know, there were still unknowns, because we didn't know whether we were at 2.5% or more, or potentially less, but it never was less.
Yeah, and I mean, I echo with what my peers had said. I mean, this is the closest that we've been, and at this, I can't think of the sports analogy, but at this point of the game, I feel like the focus is on how do we care for our students, how do we care for the teachers, how do we set them up for success. So if we have to have some level of uncertainty for year 2 and beyond, that's fine, because at the end of the day, nobody knew COVID was happening. So who knows what's going to happen in year 2? So let's focus on year 1, make sure they're set up for success, and then we can spend the time and prepare and make sure that we're in a good space for FY26.
All right, thank you, and I would agree. This, from a non-legally binding document, there's still a lot to. At the end of the day, yeah, that's where my head's at as well. Was there a second on the?
I mean, I'm not going to second it, because I think that it's not legally binding, and I'm willing to support it, because I just want the override to pass.
To be clear, I think there was a second. We have to vote on it.
Okay.
Okay. So right now, just on the amendment to, the request to table it. All those in favor? Let's roll call. Gallagher,
Yes.
Griffith,
Yes.
Charles,
No.
McNeil,
No.
Callahan, no. O'Sullivan?
No.
Sampoli? No. Okay. All right, so then we're just with the recommendation of the approval of the override pledge MOU as discussed. Any other kind of questions, comments?
So I guess my question is, how do we establish a meeting with the 3 parties and ensure that gets on the books? Because I don't think that's a motion.
It's a moot point if the override fails.
Yeah, but no, it doesn't, because I think it's something we need to do holistically as a community and revamp how we're looking at the budget and the structure, because what's been happening for the past 17 years isn't working. So we need to look at it with fresh eyes and see how do we make things better. So regardless of override passing or not, this has to happen, from my perspective.
Isn't it also a moot point if we vote to sign this now?
Yeah, so I think that's the part. Is like, do we just acknowledge that we've received it and not approve it? I think that's I don't know where we're at here, because I don't really approve it, but I
Right.
acknowledge that they put this out there, and it's great. But they can do that. But
So from a procedural standpoint, that body voted as a body, where people could have voted yes or no. It's proposed that you take a vote as a body at this point based on the amendment that was just, that was failed for the vote. Procedurally, we would have to request a meeting to have a meeting take place for that type of meeting that you were discussing, Mr. Charles. But ultimately, people have the right to vote in a way that they choose. Because you could have tabled it if that was a unit, does that make sense, majority, to table it?
Mhm.
But majority did not table, so now the vote's before you at this point, as a committee, similar to the other committees that voted on this.
Whether you voting on it doesn't preclude you from asking for a meeting with the bodies.
okay.
it's a pledge, it's not an MOU or like a legally binding document, but it is a pledge to the contents, just to be clear.
Okay.
And as written, it's open to interpretation, to be honest.
Apparently.
The way it's written. Because if we're working out a baseline of 81 million, then I'm all for it, but.
All right. See no other questions, comments? We'll go down the line. Gallagher?
Abstain.
Griffith?
No.
Charles?
Yes.
McNeil?
Yes.
Callahan, yes. O'Sullivan?
Yes.
Sampali?
Yes.
All right. Motion passes.
So, just to follow up on the meeting, I guess, who is doing what to establish that?
So I can request a meeting with the town administrator to discuss what you're asking. I can't guarantee that a meeting would take place, certainly not before the override, but I can put it out there, that was part of our meeting. The outcome of that vote was around wanting a meeting to discuss the pledge, which I will do, and I'll follow up with you all.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
It'd be good to know when that meeting is that he does the 5-year forecast. I thought it was usually June, but I may be wrong on that. That would be helpful. I could ask them my own.
I think so, but I also believe that occurred as a result of the joint budget subcommittee that occurred that summer, or I think it was July that we meet.
Okay.
So I think he was preparing that because the joint budget subcommittee, back when this journey began around the budgets, he was doing that as a kind of a baseline for us to be operating off of as we move forward. But I don't know that it would be as an annual time that he has projected that.
I thought he already did, I couldn't find it, but.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Discussion only items.
So in your packet, discussion only, you'll see the fee schedule. The policy subcommittee recently reviewed the existing fee schedules and many of the fee-based programs. The recommendation below was approved by the subcommittee contingent upon the outcome of June 11th on that override ballot question. And in the event that the override is successful, the recommendations would be to increase fees only by 2.5% versus a restructuring based on a failed override. Now I'll kick it over to you, Dr. Dutch, to talk through the specifics.
So there are some exceptions to the condition regarding the failed or successful override. So I think as you look at the athletic recommendation, that is contingent upon a failed override. If the override was successful, then we'd only be looking at a 2.5% annual escalator as to what's approved. Transportation also similarly contingent upon the override. ECDC rates and the other rates, clubs and activities, building use rental, and FHS parking were regardless of the outcome of the override. So I just wanted to make that clear. Athletics is probably the most complicated of the recommendations. You can see that there are 3 tiers. Those tiers are broken out that way based upon operational costs. So the 3 sports in tier 1 are the most expensive operationally, and they're at $1,000 per student participant. Tier 2 are $600, and tier 3 was $350 per participant, and there is no cap per student athlete or per family for athletics. Similarly, no cap on transportation, so regardless of how many students you have, each one would be $500. ECDC represents a 20% increase from the current rates for each of the different program opportunities: 4 half-day, 5 half-day, 5 full-day, and 4 hours, and then 5 full-day, 6 hours. and then a 2.5% escalator after next year. The other rates, I think, are self-explanatory. Know that parking would be a new rate. There is no current parking fee at the high school. Happy to answer questions or comments that you have. And obviously, you know, in the event of a failed override, if rates are not increased, that has an impact on reductions to our budget. We've modeled out reductions based on the fees being approved. So if they're not, then we'll need to add additional reductions.
Down this side.
No questions?
Yeah, so I do have a few questions. So, and thank you for sending out the current fees. So just to clarify, because we had for the current fees, bear with me one quick second. So track, hockey, gymnastics, and then it was all others. Has there been thought that if there, like, because I like the tiered approach, because I think the cost, like each, I don't think all sports should have the same fee because they have different expenses. If an override passes, has there been any thought of still doing the tiered approach so that it's more equitable based off of the sports that are being played?
There has been some thought. We just didn't get that far down the road in a successful override scenario.
Okay, and then, so just that I'm clear as well, so right now, I'll pick football because that's $250 as of today. If the override fails, it's gonna go up to $1,000, so a 300% increase. Okay. So I want folks to understand, with 300%, $750 more.
$750 increase for that season.
For that, yeah, exactly. And we have projections of it's a $650K value for a home. It's $560. So definitely an impact larger, and that's not just football, because at that point if your kid's in high school, they're taking the bus if they don't have a car, so that's another $500 on top of that. So we're talking about $1,250 increase for that one student, and
For one sport.
and God forbid you only have one kid. So it adds up more than what it would be collectively from an override perspective. The other question I have is, what's the average rate of the rate of increase for expenses year over year? Because I know you have like if we pass, it's a 2.5% escalator. Will that cover year over year expenses, or will we be subsidizing folks because it's not covering?
You're likely to be subsidizing folks. The MIAA increases official fees. Sometimes it's more than 2.5%. Negotiations is an unknown, so there's uncertainty as to what the stipends would be for coaches. Transportation costs go up. I can't predict whether they'll be 2.5% more, less. So it's possible that you may be subsidizing. I think originally we were talking about 3% as a figure, and through discussion went back to the 2.5%, simply because that's the number that the town is able to increase as well, and we were just trying to remain consistent. To be honest, I think 3% would be a more would provide greater assurance that you're gonna be able to meet increases. But still, it's always possible it's not going to.
Just to build off of what Dr. Dutch said, we also, when we set rates, sometimes they stay stagnant for 9 years, decade, until a policy subcommittee or we re-look at those. And then sometimes if we make an adjustment, it can become a more drastic adjustment. So this, even if modeled out is under, still puts us at the place where we're making attempts to try to keep up without completely readjusting rates every year or waiting too long where we're not keeping up with those changes, which creates more of a subsidy.
Yep, gotcha. Okay. And then going to ECDC, the rates that we have here, what does that cover in terms of like a window? Is this for the year, or is it?
That's the annual rate.
Annual rate. Okay, thank you. So I mean, I'm thinking back to my days of paying daycare, and those were very dark days. And these are actually good rates in comparison to it. So we provide
Still a
folks
deal.
a good deal. Yeah, exactly. So even with a 20% increase, that's a steal.
Yep.
All right, and then
Just to build up, it's a school, so it's not a daycare, it's actually
Yeah,
more,
yeah.
so on top of it,
Yep.
it's also an education, right?
Yep.
Just wanted to put that out there.
Yep, exactly. So
I
you're
know
you're getting more for your dollar. Your child is set up for even more success.
To attend school.
Yep,
Correct.
exactly. So, yeah, exactly. So thank you. So from a transportation standpoint, I know if students are beyond 2 miles, they don't pay for busing. If you are low income, you don't pay for busing as well. Of our ridership, do we know like what percentage are within that 2 miles that are paying today?
We do. It's not off the top of my head.
Okay, no worries.
I can get those numbers to you and send them to the committee tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, but I think that would be a.
We have the data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's one thing folks need to factor as well, especially where we're no longer doing the cap at that point. So we're talking 2 kids, $1,000 right there just to ride the bus in a failed override, plus anything else that maybe your child may be doing. There was something else I was going to ask you. I think that's it for now. So thank you.
Yeah, I have one question, Raj. Regardless the overall outcome, you mentioned like a FHS parking 125. This is the first time you're charging, right?
Correct.
Did we evaluate other towns in the same county or not?
I've looked at other towns in the past. This would be among the highest.
Sorry, I do.
Yeah,
I remembered. So I know this is talking about our fees program. So, sports, ECDC clubs, bus. I know like the music programs don't fall into this category. I guess how would they be impacted?
There are fees for the music programs. We did not include them, mostly because they're co-curricular. I can't speak to why, I can't really speak to why we didn't incorporate those. They don't, and honestly, they don't produce a lot of revenue at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we're offering through lifelong learning.
Okay.
The middle school music is running through there.
Yep.
It used to be part of the clubs and activities, but because we eliminated middle school clubs, there were still some musical opportunities through lifelong learning that we moved kids. So lifelong learning is not included, as they're within the umbrella, but they operate kind of self-funding
Yep.
in their own. So they work their own fee schedule and structure.
Okay.
But ultimately, that's where I'm thinking, if those are the music fees you're referring to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And with the restoration of clubs and activities, if we pass the override, those programs would still remain with lifelong learning, or?
No, we did not commit to that.
Okay.
We said we would reevaluate and see what made the most sense on if we would include it back into the club, if it fits there. But the idea of, from a student perspective, offering the middle school clubs again, the way they were, was the intention when we went through the budget process with you all, was to try to restore middle school clubs, so to bring back what we have. The clubs that are, we have identified, we have clear stipended language around the advisors that exists within our agreements with the FEA, and those are the clubs that we would bring back,
Okay, thank you.
and the buses.
Any other kind of questions? Comments? I had just a few myself. So just, bless it. So with, say like with the athletics, kind of these increases, like as my colleague mentioned, for like football, $750 increase contingent upon a failed override. I know some folks online or otherwise would say, well, these are just scare tactics. This here is what going to fully fund athletics?
Correct. So we mentioned this early on, but now that it's in context to actual dollars and cents, I think it's worth reiterating again. I mentioned I'm not into performance, so the idea was to just say we would cut, and to have that be a narrative out in town that we would cut athletics. I wasn't prepared to say that or recommend that. But when push came to shove on trying to balance this budget and look at the amount of reductions we're needing to make as a result of the appropriation versus what we had asked for as part of the level service plus, we needed to figure out a way to increase fees while also reducing not just our human aspects, but look at different cost centers and supplies and all those other areas. But ultimately, we're a human business, so right, you all know 78% of our budget is in salaries. So there's budget reductions and there's also increases to fees. So the idea was not to just arbitrarily say we're going to cancel sports in Franklin, but in order for us to fund our budget and limit the number of cuts that we're talking about reducing, we needed to increase fees, and then having athletics self-fund, instituting a new parking fee, instituting new transportation, and everything we discussed tonight seemed to be the balance of looking at all the different areas and trying to put together a budget that had reductions and additions at the same time to close that gap. Anything to add?
No, the increased revenue would self-fund athletics.
And I know this has been said at other meetings as well, but I think it always bears repeating that one, like I'm glad and I agree with the performance, theatrics. It's just not beneficial. And there's so many benefits to having an athletic program that Franklin can afford, whether or not we kind of commit to it. What's so difficult is when you kind of see something like football that at $1,000 kind of contingent upon a failed override. You're going to get so many individuals at the top that can't afford to drop $1,000 for the kid without thinking about it to be able to play football. And those, at below like the poverty line, those that would normally kind of apply for and receive free and reduced lunch, I think there's still going to be stipulations and safeguards for them.
Certainly.
But there is a large middle chunk of that population where they don't have those safeguards in play, and the families aren't well off enough to be able to afford $1,000 to play football. I know just my own personal experience kind of growing up, that would have been me. That would have been my family, just middle class. My folks did wonderfully for me, but I know that if, they would have been receiving like $1,000 bill for football, we would have had a lot of serious conversations, or my dad would have been picking up a lot more overtime shifts, and I would have seen even less than I would have. And so I think just when we look at this and this price tag kind of contingent upon a failed override, it's just something the entire community, I hope, hears and understands. This isn't scare tactics. These are just the dollars and cents to make it work. But there's going to be a big chunk of Franklin that's going to be going to struggle to be able to afford basic things like just letting their all-star kid play football, simply because the town, as a whole, the community can't commit to being able to fund it at an adequate level. So that's it. I'll get off my soapbox. Please.
So, one other thing, and I apologize, I'm a very pessimistic person, so from a worst case scenario, If this is override fails and this is the future state, do we have projections of what impacts all the rest of our educators as a result?
We do.
Like, cleared out now the fees is cared for. Do we have that
Yes.
viewable and something that we can share?
We can. We're pretty close to complete with what all of that looks like based on these fees. Certainly have numbers, if not the who.
Okay. Do you have a rough timing of when do we think that would be ready for us to review and consume?
Superintendent's decision.
I would say by next week. The one thing I'll mention, it came up in the budget subcommittee, was sometimes if we reduce a position and they're a senior employee or a tenured employee with seniority, they, even though the position where they're currently working may not exist anymore, they have rights to a position over someone who is a non-professional status teacher, so for a teacher in their first 3 years. So what ends up happening is you'll see a chain reaction of reduced position here, ultimately through seniority, ends up with someone being non-renewed or reduced, right? So their position exists, but somebody else is now going to teach it because they have more seniority. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is the impact of that is if you follow that down, there's individuals who are impacted, and sometimes it gets conflated with cutting either a program or a position where sometimes it is a position that's now bumped somebody else. We experience the loss of an individual who left their school to go to another, and also someone who was working for us who no longer is because they're not with us in the system anymore because they don't have a position. We don't have one for them. So I just wanted to point that out as we go through that. And why is that important? Because ultimately, if you reduce a position in this school or this level, and that person, if they're a senior employee, you're not eliminating that salary for the math equation, right? You're actually eliminating the salary of the least senior person who holds the same license in that same area. So that's what you have to use. So we take that very seriously and have to look and trace all that out over all of our employees. You have to look at everyone's license. You have to understand. So those are pieces I just would point out that we're in the process of doing. Yeah.
I mean, we have numbers. And superintendent's okay with me providing those for you right now. So we're looking at if these fees were to be approved, we'd be looking at 37 fewer staff members. That's 28 FEA members, teachers, counselors. It's ESPs, 2 administrators, 3 central office staff, interventionists, activity monitors, cutting 25% of our supplies, stipends. So those are the things that you would see cut. Obviously, those have an impact on course offerings and class size.
We're still working out the details. That's a kind of a general sense, but
Yeah, I mean,
Some of that's
those
subject to
numbers and positions those numbers change based on bumping rights and those sorts of things. But that's a rough estimate for you.
Understood. Yeah, and thank you for the clarity. I think folks are now looking like what's the impact to me and my students and my children and whatnot. And I think they want to know this, and I don't feel that the public or folks that are not as close would know all of the intricacies of it that require us to take more time to get that done. So thank you.
We're
I appreciate
close,
that.
and we'll provide an update. One thing we need to do is look at our process. We need to be really mindful of individuals. So what we don't want to do is get too ahead of an individual employee or the FEA or administrators. Like, we want to make sure that we go through this sequentially, and you are a part of that process as well before any kind of public. But those are general numbers that are kind of what we're working with as we look at the math and the shifts.
Okay, thank you.
It's not a fun exercise to be doing.
Any other questions?
No, I just want to point out, like, what an impossible task to be finishing out the end of the year and trying to tell the public, you know, we're not necessarily cutting curriculum that's mandated and necessary. Of course, it's gonna be the, you know, extracurricular classes and the arts and the musics and the world languages. And it's always the same story. And I think people wanna know, like, you know, are we stopping orchestra? Are we stopping theater? You know, and it's like, there's a human, to your point, there's a human tied to that position. So it's like, we're not just playing with numbers here, we're playing with lives. So, yeah, just, you're in a really tough position to try and keep morale up right now, so, sorry.
Cuts of this magnitude we've been saying this is not new, I'll just repeat it, but cuts of this magnitude impact programming. You have to look at it, you can't look at it as an individual or a one-off when you're talking about this type of number, because you have to look at, once again, the DIP presentation, shared experiences for kids. You can't eliminate one thing at one school and allow it at 4 others, right? You can't have it at one middle school but not 2 others. So I think when you look programmatically, that's how the lens you have to use. And I don't want to make this a budget reduction conversation at this stage, but this is important information for you and the community to know. And as soon as we have more detail that we can provide with respect to people directly impacted, we will certainly do that. Because our goal is not to try to hold all this, keep this in, but be as respectful to that process and make sure that we're bringing the constituents I mentioned earlier along, which include you all.
Thank you very much. All right, this is a discussion only item, so no vote needed. So we could jump down then to information matters, starting with superintendent evaluation. Neil?
Well, we had our presentation of the superintendent's evidence this evening at the school committee, and as mentioned, the superintendent evaluation subcommittee will be meeting on the 12th with the report being presented for a vote on the 18th.
Okay. And how about budget?
Budget met this evening. We discussed the update for FY25 budget, discussed the revolving accounts, their standing, the kind of review of those, and also discussed the projections for future budgets given potential override. And as of now, we have a tentative meeting scheduled for the 12th of June, which may or may not need to happen. It'll be based on whether or not the override passes.
Policy.
Policy, we read the new policy tonight, first reading, so parents will be able to get their money out once their student leaves the school. Aside from that, we just went over some of these fee decisions, but we are done for the year.
Okay. Community relations.
So we do have the Strawberry Stroll on June 7th. So I will send you all another email. Let me know your availability, folks. We have some handouts that the 3 committee members are creating. Doing the budget. Ruth Ann is doing override, and Erin is working on facilities content. So it'll be good stuff to hand out to folks. Be able to take a look at it, read it, get some links to using QR codes to the source content to get more information about it. And we also have the magnets as well. We don't officially have a meeting on the books, but I think we should probably look for June 10th just to kind of close it off for the school year. So I'll look for all of you for availability and close that out. And then we have the newsletter that's going out on Thursday the 6th.
Awesome. And how about joint PCC?
Joint PCC, we are scheduled for the 10th. I think our time may be changing. Superintendent Jagir, I'm not sure if we ironed out timing for that one.
We did not.
Okay.
We can though.
Okay, cool.
I have a question about PCC. Can I ask that?
Yes, please.
So I've got some feedback from people. They're looking for something official from the district. You know, more or less parents are supportive of the override, but there's some apprehension on the side of the PCC, almost like a municipal employee, like they don't want to share things that aren't from the district. So I was going to put together, just because obviously like I'm chairing this override committee, I was going to put together for the Yes for Franklin side, just a letter from the school committee, just endorsing the override, endorsing the Yes for Franklin group, and I was going to gonna see if you guys would all sign that, so that it's something that at least the PCC can say we have like a unified school committee right now. So, something worth mentioning, I guess, in an open meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
I
game
know.
for signing it.
Is
I'm voting
anybody
yes.
against-
I
is
mean,
anybody
so,
not
yeah,
in favor?
exactly.
Just because I think that would help, you know, it's like the superintendent can only share so much, so it's kind of, they're looking for someone in an official capacity. I may be skeptical of me because I'm chairing the override committee, so maybe if we all just signed on saying, hey, we're endorsing this, obviously we approved the budget, I might just send that out to you guys. I wanted to mention in this meeting. That's the purpose of it.
Well, I think, I know, okay, we'll jump back to the rest of the
Yeah, sorry.
other items, but I do know, you know, there are other items that could be brought up for discussion by the chair. And so please let me know, but I think, I mean, we even could make sure that we're doing it in a public setting.
Yeah.
You know, is it possible to kind of entertain a motion to endorse the override that's been put on the ballot for June 11th?
Yeah, I would like to do that, just so we can have it on record, and then I could just draft something up that's simple.
So you're looking to take a vote right now to endorse it?
Yeah, I think what the question is, yeah, can the committee itself, because I know the committee can endorse the override for, you know, as it stands, as it's written, you know, for June 11th.
I don't know if you can take a formal vote
Okay.
at this point, but if you're all in agreement on endorsing this idea of voting your approved budget and giving that publicly, this is your opportunity to deliberate and discuss as a committee. If you're all endorsing that, then you could share that right now publicly with Ruth Ann. And then it's not an action item that you have for a vote tonight.
So why don't we, we'll bring it up during new business.
Sure, yeah, I'm just looking for
Okay.
your permission to
Yep.
put your name
Yep.
on it, but I don't need to vote. Thanks.
Okay. But that was with joint PCC.
Yeah, that's
Correct.
why,
Okay.
that was
No,
a
no.
particular group that was looking for something like that, so that's, yeah.
Nope, all right, that sounds great. No, I think, yeah, during new business, we'll discuss
Endorse.
that. Comprehensive Facility Assessments Subcommittee, we'll be meeting likely for one last time on the 5th, before, I would say probably kind of consolidating that one, and then just moving to an implementation committee or task force. SWAC.
There is no meeting this week, and we have the Strawberry Store in June 7th as well.
Awesome. Mental health.
Same thing, we're having a table, I think it's being headed up by Sarah McBarty. So, stop by and see that table there, Strawberry Stroll.
And I will say too, just with the mental health, since the discussion of all the changes with the schools, I've gotten a number of individuals with who are more than willing to kind of help out and kind of serve on like the mental health well-being task force. A lot that kind of have some like professional backing in terms of just child psychology and mental health, and so I'd love to be able to kind of connect everybody soon. And DEI.
No updates.
Okay. All right. Consent agenda.
Okay. I recommend approval of the minutes from your May 14th, 2024 school committee meeting as detailed. I recommend acceptance of a check for $28.50 from Box Tops for Jefferson field trips as detailed. I recommend acceptance of a check for $350 from the Parmenter PCC for field trips as detailed. I recommend acceptance of a check for $300 from O'Connor Portraiture for supplemental supplies as detailed.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as detailed?
Motion to approve the consent agenda as detailed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussions, questions? All right, seeing none, vote will call the motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, 5-0. Consent agenda approved.
5-0.
All right, 6 is All right, citizens' comments. Are there any citizens in the audience, in person or online, who would like to make a comment on an item not on tonight's agenda and falls within the committee's purview? One online. Name, address, and try to keep it 3 minutes.
Hey there, Megan Benson, Woodford Drive. So back on March 5th, there were parents who distributed one Franklin political committee flyers at least one school during a half day. I asked Superintendent Jagir what the rules were regarding political flyers being handed out on school property and still haven't heard back. Mr. Jagir did mention that he was meeting with the Office of Campaign Finance on March 26th, but when I reached back out on April 22nd to follow up, I received no response. With all the upcoming school events, I think clarity on this issue is necessary. I realize that there's a hesitancy or maybe an inability on part of the, I guess, some town officials to properly educate themselves on important issues. The redistricting plan and override MOU are both great examples of this, but Franklin residents deserve some clarity on this particular issue, and hopefully it will be provided soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan.
I can do that. We can provide some guidance on that, so.
Okay, wonderful. Appreciate that. All right, seeing no others, new business.
New business, so next meeting is on June 18th. If there is a failed override, you would need to vote on a new budget based on the town appropriation that occurred last week through the budget hearings for all the departments. We also, the superintendent evaluation report, as you heard, we also will have end-of-year executive session minute reviews, and also page 15 of the report card will come back before you with the proposed changes to that. And that's the bulk of that particular meeting on June 18th.
Okay. So then, the one other item then was just to look for an endorsement with signatures.
That'd be helpful, yeah.
So, we can have, anyway, I can draft it up. But just to kind of say that, I'll let everybody know it's not a spoiler. I'm going to vote yes on June 11th. But to state that, these members of the school committee are endorsing the override as it stands. Nothing else, just their endorsement of the override on this date with this amount, exactly as it's written in the ballot question. And that can kind of go around, and if you wish to sign your name to it, that's fantastic. If you don't wish to sign your name to it, that's entirely, fine as well. But we can certainly kind of draft that up, have, whoever does want to go and sign on to it, make an endorsement of the, in favor of the override, and then that can kind of be disseminated out, not through, there's been a lot of OCPF webinars and conversations and ethics, not through any email or free group or listservs that we have, but just disseminated online outside the normal, public use resources for anybody such as.
I think it gives it some validity to
Yeah.
know that we're all,
Okay. Then otherwise, go on to executive session. We're going to adjourn, not to return to open session. So as per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Is there a motion to enter into executive session and not to return back?
Motion to enter executive session and not to return to open session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's a wrap for the public. Thank you all very much. know.
Been going past 11, past month.
He's a trooper. Oh, we got it included in the agenda. I just gave you a job when I first mentioned it, but